water, and this back end sort of creates a wave, and so the stone tends to rise up over that wave that it creates, and that's what allows it to get a lift force that gets it back in the air again before the next impact and over again.
And brought both of them together.
Oh, gorgeous.
To see if we can figure out how a world-class stone skipper gets so many touches on the water, and what the limit might actually be. So we're here today with Kurt Steiner. He's the world record holder in stone skipping, specifically most consecutive skips on the water. And how many skips was that?
It was 88.
That's so remarkable. I can't even, I'm not a really talented stone skipper, but you know, if I find myself at a lake with some stones, I will do some skipping. I think the most I've ever done is like 13 or 14, and like that makes me really, really happy and proud. So 88 is like, how?
It is what makes you happy that counts more, but I think we can get that number up a bit.
We flew Steiner and a couple boxes of rocks to Utah, where he gave me some lessons on extreme stone skipping. Steiner makes it look easy, but a good skip is more than just how hard you throw a stone or at which angle. In fact, it all starts with the stone itself. Okay, that was closer to like 15, 16?
I was going to say 15.
All right, 15. All right. So the most I've ever skipped before this is around 14, 15.
Right.
And here on my second throw, I hit around 14, 15, which tells me there's a lot to do with the rock you're using. Steiner's stones made a huge difference. The worst rock in this box is better than the nicest rock I've ever skipped. Steiner, like a lot of top skippers, is very particular about his stones. He collects his from Lake Erie, a few hours from his home in Pennsylvania.
A lot of questions as to what kind of rock is best, right? The general category I use is just how many sides is it.
Steiner isn't just an expert stone skipper. He's an expert stone picker, too.
This one is pretty similar to the one I would have set the record with.
He uses different shapes for different skips and different conditions.
People like triangles. I used to like triangles, but they just chew up the water too much. You're always kind of weighing how much irregularity is in my rock against how hard am I throwing it against what water am I throwing it onto.
Steiner also showed me how to hold the stone for maximum skipping.
The first thing you ever want to do is determine which side's going to be down, right? And you generally want to go with a flatter or slightly rounded. If it's cupped or jagged, put that up. Especially you want to look at the outer edge because the stone almost never touches except around a ½ inch around the edge.
But as I soon found out, there's a lot more to skipping than just picking a good stone.
Okay.
Steiner uses a variety of grips and stances for things like distance, power, and number of skips.
That's a high spin throw. And then there's one here where you're a little closer to the water. That's a good way to get a lot of power in real close.
He's got a classic low skimming toss and an unusual overhand swing.
But basically, you're just going to try to swat the water as hard as you can with the rock as flat as possible.
He showed me how to get a little more whip on my skip.
Oops.
Lesson number 1, throw hard.
You've got a lot more strength than you're using.
He suggested trailing my hand.
Yeah, and don't start pivoting your waist around and your shoulder around until that left leg is a good foot out in front of you. If you drag your arm, right, you see what I mean? You're almost opening up into the throw. It'll tension up across here, and then essentially your hand is catching back up to the rest of your body and it'll snap out better.
All right, let's give that a shot.
Okay. Now that actually looked a little better to me. So now the third part is where it comes together here. That's where you've got to hit your target.
Next, Kurt had me aim for a first touch closer to the shoreline.
Did you notice how when you threw the rock, the longer it stays in the air, the more it'll roll over on its side? Mm-hmm. That is always happening. You can minimize that, obviously, by lessening the time in the air, which is one reason you want to hit close.
So we're going to be focusing on 3 things on this throw based on Kurt's feedback. 1, I'm going to be delaying the start of my throw so I can utilize more of my biomechanics. 2, I'm going to try to throw it hard. And 3, I'm going to try to make contact with the water really close to myself.
There it is.
So that looked like high teens to me.
Immediate improvement. And that was your first try.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Every throw is a complete new puzzle.
So how is it that someone like Steiner can skip stones so many times? To find out, we asked Tad Truscott, who runs the Splash Lab at Utah State University in Logan.
Yeah, the Splash Lab, welcome.
Thanks. You've got a lot of really cool stuff in here.
Yeah, it looks like junk, but we're using all of it.
Yes, it's a real lab, and the work they do there is amazing.
And then this tank here where I shot bullets into it for my thesis, my PhD thesis.
You shot bullets into this.
Yeah, absolutely. They were modified 22 bullets.
Is that what that hole is?
Yeah,
right there?
yeah, is where we missed. But that's a misfire, but yeah.
To study stone skipping, Truscott and his team recorded Steiner hurling stones into a tank at thousands of frames per second. To figure out how many skips are possible, you have to first understand just how a skip works. Here's what happens.
So you have the stone, it's in your hand, and you throw it. And as you do that, you release it off of your fingers, and that causes it to have some spin. So this spin is really important. We call it gyroscopic stabilization. It essentially holds the attack angle of the rock with respect to, say, the surface of the water. So then when you hit the water, it deforms the water and pushes a wave out in front of it. But the velocity of the stone is much faster than the wave that it creates, and so it ends up rising up on that wave that it created, and this causes a little lift force. The rock is able to go back into the air and then back down. And so this happens over and over and over again for a good rock skip, right? And that gyroscopic stabilization is what keeps that attack angle correct, and friction is really the only other thing that's like reducing your ability to keep going.
The Splash Lab isn't the only one studying stone skipping. A group of French scientists first figured out a model for ideal skipping in 2004.
These researchers in France found out that the optimal angle for a disc to skip on the water's surface is about 20 degrees for both the attack angle and also that velocity vector. That coupled with how fast it is thrown, as well as how much gyroscopic stabilization it has, sort of set up the problem to find out what the maximum number of skips you can get, or the number of skips you'll get based on what that spin rate is and what that velocity is and that impact angle.
Now, you might think that studying stone skipping is a bit frivolous, but Truscott says there are practical applications.
Yeah, definitely. So a spacecraft that was proposed that would bounce off the atmosphere as it kind of came back towards Earth. And use that to keep itself out. You know, if you want to land on, say, the moon of Titan, you may want to come in for a soft landing. Knowing how skipping works might be a great way to do that.
To figure out how Steiner skips so many times, Truscott and his lab also went into the field to gather data on his arm speed and the rotation of the stones.
All right! I think that was it, dude.
Steiner's maximum speed is around 50 miles an hour. His world record skip was calculated at 43 miles per hour. But he also has years of experience. Even his dud throws put my best efforts to shame. But could someone best his record?
I've seen one or two people who have a technique that could maybe beat that, but it's almost impossible.
Now, you might remember from our previous episode on the fastball that pitchers are about maxed out on speed at just over 100 miles per hour. Truscott applied that metric to stone skipping and came up with some amazing calculations.
A really safe place on our chart puts you around 93 mile an hour throw, because these are a little heavier than a baseball, and they have a bigger radius, which makes their moment of inertia larger. So you need a little more energy in that side of it. So 93 miles an hour is about where you're topping out. You're going to have about 2,800 to 3,000 revolutions per minute, and if you can get there, that's close to 164 joules. You're going to probably get close to 350 skips.
350 skips.
Under the current idea, yeah. Is that even possible? 300 already just seems ridiculous, right? I don't even know who could count that. Like, I couldn't count 10 today.
Steiner thinks the limit is probably closer to 200.
If that's what the number says, I'd like to go test it.
Truscott and other scientists have modeled their projections using a perfectly round disc. But as Steiner showed me, there are no uniform stones.
Because Mother Nature never sees fit to make two of the same thing. I have to get on her about that.
So skipping a stone might seem like a simple thing, but it's actually this beautifully complex mix of skill, athleticism, and fascinating physics.
It's such a miracle to me what's going on. You know, it's just this weird dance of water and stone and air.
So will we ever see 300 consecutive skips, or 350? That's a good question. It'll probably take someone with a major league caliber arm and Kurt Steiner's devotion. But what we're seeing these days from the world's top skippers is already almost impossible. This is the year of the quad. Since the last Olympic Games, snowboarders and skiers have perfected a trick called the quad cork, which looks and sounds ridiculous because it is. It's 5 full spins and 4 full flips, all in the span of about 3 seconds. But you know who spins a lot faster than that in way less time? Figure skaters. We're gonna find out what it takes to spin your body 4 times in the air in a fraction of a second, and why spinning 5 times could be almost impossible. 3 years ago, British snowboarder Billy Morgan pulled off the world's first quad cork. Morgan will be at the Olympics, as will Andre Rogetli, who last year became the first person to do a quad cork on skis. Mind you, these are some of the world's best athletes. Rogetli's crazy parkour workout went viral this fall because it's like a superhuman Rube Goldberg in the gym. But only a few years ago, skiers and snowboarders weren't even sure the quad cork was possible. Which raises an interesting question. Are we at the limit of how much a human can turn and flip through the air? As amazing as the quad cork is, it might not be the limit. One physicist calculated that a boarder could actually complete 6 or more corkscrews. That's because snowboarders and skiers get hang times of close to 3 seconds. That may not sound like much, but it is a lot of time to a figure skater like 16-year-old Din Tran. He's an up-and-coming skater in San Francisco. He took home the silver at Junior Nationals this year. So you're here today to practice quads, right?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, try.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Emphasis on try?
Yeah.
But getting that quad down perfect is tough. Din and other skaters don't get a ramp to launch from. They have only their leg muscles to propel them about 1.5 feet off the ice. And then they've got just about 0.6 of a second to rotate and land.
It's one really big fast motion, so you jump up in the air and then you kind of pull your arms in and your legs in at the same time.
If you've ever seen a skater spin, you've got the idea. They start with their arms extended, and as they pull their arms in, it causes the rotation to speed up. Same thing when they're in the air. That's because of something called the conservation of angular momentum. Angular momentum depends on both the speed of the skater's rotation and the position of the skater's body relative to the axis. That's the center of their rotation. The closer the body parts are to the axis of rotation, the faster they spin. And then, of course, there's the landing.
Or you have to open up before you make contact with the ice, which stops the rotation and is a definition of a landing.
Quads have become pretty much mandatory for the top male skaters, thanks in part to U.S. national champion Nathan Chen, the first man to land 5 of them in one program. To get a better sense of what it takes, I bounced with an Olympic skater, got insanely dizzy on this thing, and talked revolutions per minute with this guy.
My name is Jim Richards. I'm a professor at the University of Delaware. I work with the United States Figure Skating to assist coaches and skaters in performing multiple revolution jumps.
Richards is a professor of kinesiology, and he uses motion capture technology to map jumps and help correct slight imbalances that can throw off even elite skaters.
I learned a long time ago that most of the skaters jump high enough, and most of them leave the ice with enough angular momentum to to complete the jump, but most of them fail in the air. They adopt a position that doesn't enable them to spin as fast as they need to complete the jump.
To learn what that kind of rotation feels like, I got some help from Tim Gable. He was the first American to land a quad in competition and did 3 of them on his way to a bronze medal at the 2002 Olympics. They called him the Quad King. You're actually known as the Quad King, right?
I was the Quad King until Nathan Chen came along and unseated me.
So what did it take to become the Quad King?
I think it took a lack of fear and probably a little stupidity.
And some time on the trampoline, which skaters use to practice their jumps.
I mean, you get more hang time on a trampoline. You can experiment with the technique and the air position a little bit more with a lot less wear and tear on your body.
I'm all about less wear and tear on the body.
So just one easy turn.
And Gable made it look pretty easy. But for me, totally different story. Tim gave me a lot of pointers on how to engage my core and spin more efficiently. Right arm is out,
Right arm's out.
core is engaged, and all right,
Well done, my friend.
3 to go. I asked him to time me while I went for my magnificent spin and a half.
And 1.08. Well, you get enough hang time to successfully complete a quad.
I get
so
enough hang time to
That's
successfully.
impressive.
Even after dozens of jumps, I never made it to even 2
Nice.
revolutions, much less 4. One of the reasons to train on a trampoline is that ice skating, for all its grace, is a brutal sport. Researchers at Brigham Young University actually attach sensors to skates to record the impact forces of landing big jumps.
From the data that we've collected with the instrumented blade, we found that skaters land with somewhere between 5 to 8 times their body weight.
Even on the safety of a trampoline, there was no way I was ever gonna pull off a quad like the elite skaters if I couldn't spin faster.
If they're going to successfully land a quad, peak rotation velocity is going to have to be 400 RPM or higher.
That's crazy. To pull off a quint would involve even faster speeds. So fast that Richards doesn't really think they're possible.
In order to land a quint, which puts their average rotation velocity around 400 RPM, that would put their peak rotation velocity closer to 500 RPM.
Wow.
So the highest we've ever actually seen is about 430, 440 in that range.
So you remember how pulling your arms in can actually make you spin faster? There's a way to practice that at home. It's with one of these things. It's called a Gold Medal Pro Spin Trainer, and it's basically a human turntable. It is, per the instructions, for serious skaters, so naturally I tried practicing with it and basically just made myself sick. And then I brought it into work for my coworkers to try. Pretty sure none of us got anywhere close to hitting 400 RPM, even if we all felt that way. But there might be a way for professionals to get the speeds they need to do a quint. And that's with these. They're weighted gloves. And in an experiment, Sarah Ridge and Jim Richards had athletes wear them while performing jump spins. I'm going to show you why from the safety of this chair.
So if you have a greater amount of angular momentum because your arms were out wide and because you had extra mass further away from your axis of rotation, once you're in the air and you bring your arms in, that extra mass is that close to your axis of rotation. All that's left is you're going to increase your rotation speed.
And it worked. Kind of. At least for the first few jumps, all of the skaters were over-rotated, which meant that the gloves were doing their job. But after a few more jumps, all of the skaters adapted back to spinning the way they did before the gloves. But even if skaters could learn to use the weight to their advantage, there's no guarantee that it would be enough to spin them around 5 times, let alone that it would be legal. So we're probably not going to see a quint anytime soon. And it's not hard to see why. Spinning is absurdly difficult. Even on a trampoline, getting twice the air that the pros get, I could barely do it 1.5 times, and it looked terrible. Spinning, even a little bit, made me feel nauseous, and I never even tried it out on the ice because this place would not let me. So at this year's games, when you see people spinning and they make it look really easy, remember that it really, really is not. In fact, it's right at the edge of what is humanly possible. Elite distance runners have been closing in on a 2-hour marathon for more than a century. But the sport's last great barrier has proven elusive. For decades, the world's fastest times have fallen by mere seconds at a time. That was until earlier this year, when Eliud Kipchoge chopped a staggering 2 minutes and 32 seconds from the world's previous best time, coming just 25 seconds short of the 2-hour mark. But his time doesn't qualify for world record status. That's because Kipchoge's race wasn't an official marathon. It was more like a carefully controlled experiment. Members of Nike's Breaking 2 project spent 4 years and millions of dollars preparing 3 athletes for this race, optimizing everything from the shoes they wore to the course they raced on. Only Kipchoge came anywhere near Breaking 2. Understanding the science behind Kipchoge's race helps explain how he came so close, and why this one race could forever change the way elite athletes run marathons. One of the most controversial elements of the Breaking 2 project were the shoes. Kipchoge and the other runners ran in customized versions of the Vaporfly 4%, a shoe with a thick, springy sole and a carbon fiber plate that Nike claims can increase running economy by an average of 4%. But what does that 4% figure actually mean? And where did it come from?
I'm Roger Crom. I'm a professor in the Integrative Physiology Department here at the University of Colorado Boulder, and we call this the Locomotion Lab.
Nike knew from internal testing that the Vaporfly was fast, but when they needed someone to check their math, they called Crom. His lab is known for accurately measuring the energy that athletes expend during exercise.
We built this one also ourselves in a machine shop. When we first built it, it was the first force-measuring treadmill.
A postdoc named Wouter Hoogkamer led the investigation, comparing a prototype version of the Vaporfly to 2 other shoes, the Nike Streak 6 and the Adidas Adios Boost 2. At the time the study was performed, these 2 shoes or their predecessors had been worn in the 10 fastest marathons of all time.
An Adidas shoe was worn by Dennis Kimetto and he set the world record.
Now, the Adios Boost 2 weighed about 50 grams more than either of the Nike shoes, so Hoogkamer used lead pellets to equalize the weight of all 3. That way, he'd know that any energy saved with the Vaporfly would be because of its springy sole and carbon fiber plate, not its weight. Next, the test subjects performed a series of 5-minute runs in each of the shoes in different orders on different days, while the researchers measured their oxygen consumption. When Crom's team calculated the metabolic cost of running in each shoe, they found about a 4% difference between the Vaporfly and the other 2 racing flats. All 18 test subjects responded a little bit differently, but each of them used between 2 and 6% less energy to run in the Vaporfly. There are, however, 2 big caveats. Number 1, Nike did fund this research, but it was a well-designed study and the data is pretty compelling. The second caveat? The shoe's 4% advantage applies to test subjects running under ideal conditions for 5 minutes at a time. But the extent to which that advantage extends to an actual marathon is still unclear. Look at it this way. A 4% boost in efficiency should mean that a marathoner usually capable of running a 2:05 race would be able to slip on a pair of these shoes and run pretty close to a 2-hour race, no problem. But that's not what we see in the real world, which suggests that something is lost between a 5-minute treadmill run and a 26.2-mile road race. The truth is, a marathon boils down to a bunch of different factors, and what you wear on your feet is just one of them. So, what other variables can you account for?
I think it's just the level of control we had. We controlled the course extremely well, because I think a lot of the knowledge around optimum conditions for these types of events is reasonably well known. I mean, we did some fine tuning.
The racetrack at Monza gave Nike the control to optimize a bunch of factors known to affect running performance, like temperature, elevation, nutrition, even the turns in the course. All of which, when added together, probably had a pretty big impact on Kipchoge's race. Take turns, for instance. The more corners a course has, and the sharper they are, the more times a runner has to slow down or take a longer route, which adds up to valuable seconds over the course of a race. The same goes for hills. A flat course is generally preferable to one with a lot of ups and downs. Consider the Berlin Marathon. It only has a handful of sharp corners, and it's flatter than a lot of other big city marathons like London or New York. These qualities make Berlin a very fast course. On average, elite runners finish 81 seconds quicker in Berlin than they do at other races, which probably explains why every marathon world record in the last 15 years has been set in Germany. The junior circuit at Monza? It's even flatter than Berlin and has no sharp corners. In fact, the big sweeping curves at Monza ensured that Kipchoge and the other runners were always running the fastest, shortest route possible. The looped course also made it easier to deliver nutrition to the runners at regular intervals along the run. About the only thing Monza didn't have going for it was weather. Running generates body heat, and too much slows you down. Cold temperatures help runners dissipate heat, letting them run faster, longer. Numerous studies suggest that the ideal temperature for professional marathoners is below 50 or even 40 degrees Fahrenheit. But on race day at Monza, temperatures were a little higher than ideal.
It was about 55 degrees and a little bit humid, and I wonder if they would have been able to go faster if it had been 5 or 6 or 10 degrees cooler.
That's Michael Joyner. He's a physician researcher at the Mayo Clinic and an expert in human performance. In 1991, he published a paper that predicted the ideal athlete, running under ideal conditions, could complete a marathon in 1 hour, 57 minutes, 58 seconds. We asked him what he thought made the biggest difference in Kipchoge's time, and he had a very clear answer.
I think the three aspects of Breaking 2 that contributed most heavily to the performance are the drafting, the pace car providing a very steady pace the whole way, and also the runners who were both causing the windbreak but also participating in the drafting.
In traditional marathons, pacers have to start the race with the runners, and they can only lead the pack as long as they're physically able. So they always drop out long before the race is over. But for Breaking 2, Nike cycled teams of pacers in and out of the race over the course of the entire run, in a finely tuned configuration never before seen in a marathon. To determine the ideal arrangement for blocking wind, Nike worked with aerodynamics expert Robbie Ketchell and the University of New Hampshire to test pacing formations in a massive wind tunnel. They tried a house configuration, an inverted Olympic ring, and a wall shape with 2 rows of 3 pacers. But the data showed the best configuration was the arrowhead shape you see here. That kind of advantage can shave minutes from a marathon time. But what about the pace car? In the days after the Breaking 2 race, a lot of people speculated that the pace car and the giant clock on top of it was providing an even bigger aerodynamic advantage than the pacers, which is not a crazy theory. The sign was big, and the athletes were running pretty close to the car. Nike and Ketchell say the car and clock had a negligible effect on Kipchoge's performance. Of course, Nike would say that, but it's also probably true. Aerodynamics engineers Stephen Ferguson and Chris Beavis, who are unaffiliated with the Nike project, ran a full simulation of the benefits Kipchoge would have experienced in the wake of the Tesla and the Pacers. But according to their simulations, almost all of the drag reduction came from the Pacers. Ferguson and Beavis estimate the car, clock, and Pacers together might have saved Kipchoge as much as 4 minutes and 30 seconds, compared to running on his own. But the car and clock saved at most 26 seconds. And that's under ideal conditions. On race day, they might have saved Kipchoge half that. As for how the Breaking 2 project will affect the way marathons are run in the future, every single expert we spoke to said the big thing they expect to see going forward are more coordinated pacing efforts.
And or if a team was unified under the same country or under the same sponsor, then you had those 4 runners who did the term we came up with was cooperative drafting. And if you had cooperative drafting, even in the last fourth of the marathon or so, that could make a big difference.
I think the other thing that'll be interesting will be to see if you get team races, Team Nike versus Team Adidas, or this country versus that country, sort of like you have in cycling, where people could work together as sort of the running equivalent of a peloton.
But the Breaking 2 project also shows that the 2-hour boundary won't fall from pacing alone. Overcoming the marathon's 120-minute barrier will still require breakthroughs on multiple fronts. And so the arms race between shoe companies will continue in the form of ever lighter, bouncier, more propulsive shoes. Expect race organizers to optimize the conditions under which marathons are run. And most importantly, look for elite athletes like Eliud Kipchoge to continue pushing the limits of what's humanly possible.
The hope for running under 2 hours was 2 minutes 57 seconds. Now we are only 25 seconds away.
A good side quest gives you a break from the main game, doing something fun, interesting, or karaoke. Beautiful. Some side quests, however, decided that what players really wanted was optional activities that were so tedious or time-consuming that we took the optional part seriously and opted to never finish them, so screw you, game. Here are 8 side quests that we never finished, and if you did, then congratulations! You wasted precious hours of the only life you'll ever have. No, only kidding. Good job.
Kiflam, brother, father, you now know we're not alone.
And you've discovered the importance of higher beings, celebrities, like me, as people to worship and guide you to truth. Here, this is your medal for your achievements so far.
Despite being over 4 years old, Grand Theft Auto 5 is still a permanent fixture in the top 10 game charts. A feat even more impressive when you remember that this is the game that includes the side mission called Exercising the Truth. Possibly included as some sort of psychological experiment to see just how much people are willing to put up with in a GTA mission, Exercising the Truth is a side quest you undertake for the definitely real and definitely not made up religion, the Epsilon program.
Hello, Zondar. Kiflam.
Kiflam. Marnie. Wait, man, I thought my name was Zulai.
That's because everything you have ever thought is wrong, Zondar.
By this point in the Epsilon program questline, you've already found an alien boot, acquired the name Zondar, and worn their official robes for 10 consecutive days, so nothing they send your way should faze you. And yet when they ask you to run 5 miles through the desert for ill-defined reasons, you'll find your faith severely tested.
But first, you must wear your medal and your attire and run 5 miles through the desert. Kiflam.
Yes, they're asking you to run for 5 miles through the cougar-infested Sonora Desert, in a dicey slog that will take you 20 minutes of epically dull button tapping to complete. And you have to wear that dumb outfit while doing it, so you look stupid. I mean, even more stupid than you would look normally, running a fictional 5 miles in a video game.
Kiflam. 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 Kiflam.
It's not essential to finish this mission to complete Grand Theft Auto 5, but it is essential to finish this mission if you want to have the opportunity to later give $50,000 of your own money to the Epsilon program. So best get running, people.
Do you have the cash?
Yes, I do.
How about I just don't do the side mission? What do you say to that, Michael?
Kiflam.
Ugh, you always say that.
It's a wonder Hyrule ever gets saved with the amount of dicking around that the various links do instead of focusing on the task at hand. For our money though, the biggest waste of time in a Zelda game is the figurine collection side quest from The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker, in which you need to collect 134 figurines of different characters from the game in the most annoying and time-consuming way imaginable. To start with, you need to acquire the deluxe Pictobox camera and take a picture of the subject you want made into a figurine to Karlov the figurine carver. The subject has to be photographed the exact right way, as Karlov is a jerk and won't accept pictures that are off by even the slightest degree. Plus, your camera can only hold 3 photographs at a time, so you'd better hope you get it right. You then have to wait an entire day while he makes the carving, and he can only work on 1 figurine at a time. Then it's a simple case of repeating this process 133 times. And you too can say you completed the gallery in Wind Waker and got absolutely nothing. Don't know what I was expecting. Some of these issues were addressed in the Wind Waker HD, but that came out 11 years after the original Wind Waker. So if you were trying to do this at the time, your options were to do it the way the game wanted you to, or to wait 11 years. Which, honestly, would have taken you about the same amount of time.
What are you doing out here, Petruccio? You should be in bed.
I want those feathers.
What for?
It's a secret.
If I get them for you, will you go back inside?
Yes, I promise.
Ezio Auditore's younger brother Petruccio is a sickly child who dies almost immediately in Assassin's Creed 2. Before he goes, though, he leaves you with his terrible legacy, collecting feathers for no discernible reason.
You still haven't told me why you want these.
I will. In time.
Cool, I'll look forward to that. When Petruccio dies, you might think you're off the hook, but that's where you're wrong, kiddo, because Ezio's mum Maria has now picked up the mantle of wanting you to fill a box in her bedroom with loose bird bits.
I still can't get her to talk. She spends all day and night in front of those feathers Petruccio used to collect.
How many feathers seems like a reasonable request, would you say? 10? 20 at a push? Try 100 scattered across the entire game in hard-to-reach dangerous spots where at any point you could slip off a ledge and get that dead Auditore sun tally up to a nice round 100%. Maria, what are you doing that needs 100 feathers? Is it building a new sun out of feathers? Because if it's that, that's weird. Still, it's such a time-consuming, arduous task, the reward must be something pretty awesome, right? Well, that depends on how awesome you think the Auditore cape is. A cape that is visually almost identical to all your other capes, and that has the added benefit of making you notorious wherever you go, causing most guards to attack you on sight.
Hey, who's that over there?
Thanks a lot, Petruccio and Maria. Aren't there any sensible Auditores?
Maybe you should focus on more important things.
Thank you, Mario. Jeez.
You what? You want to be a combatant? Look at you! My granny could beat you, and she's dead.
Quick, what was the best part of the Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion? I mean, obviously the answer is the Dark Brotherhood party quest, but if you disagree and answered the combat, then you're probably the only person in the world who enjoyed the arena side missions in Oblivion. The arena is a gladiatorial coliseum in the Imperial City where you can win money, respect, and unsolicited titles such as Myrmidon and Pit Dog.
You ain't so bad after all, Pit Dog.
I might just stick with Mike, if it's all the same to you guys. There are 8 ranks in total, and to finish the questline you have to finish all 8 ranks and defeat the Grand Champion, meaning you'll need to do 25 fights in a game where combat is empirically the worst thing about it. That's 24 fights and several hours of flailing in your opponent's direction with swords until they fall over before you're allowed to take on the Grand Champion. At least they let you pick your own nickname for that one.
Sir Slaughter, huh? I like it.
Knighted for services to slaughtering, you presume. If we had carried on down this questline instead of abandoning it at the first opportunity to go steal wheels of cheese from people, we'd have found out that it ties in with an actual interesting side mission in which you can look into the champion's parentage and find out that he's half vampire. A fact that leaves him so distraught that he won't attack you in your final fight, leaving himself completely defenseless.
In the arena, I can end my misery.
Of course, in that situation, being a noble warrior, I imagine we'd never take advantage of an opponent in this way, and instead we'd choose to... Just kidding.
Mass Effect 2 has many fine DLC packs available for those who wanted to extend their time with the game. But while some gave you new weapons and armor, and others gave you new squad mates and story missions, the Firewalker DLC pack gave you a stress headache and the desire to stop playing Mass Effect 2. In these 5 missions, you take control of the M44 Hammerhead, a vehicle named after a shark, because that went so well with the Mako, didn't it, Mass Effect? Reasoning that the only thing people loved more than the Mako in the Mass Effect series was the planetary scanning, BioWare combined the two to create a series of missions in which you hover around scanning things, because it's important for all great art to contain one deliberate mistake so that it doesn't anger God. I mean, I've got to assume that's what's going on here, because these Firewalker missions are the pits.
Please keep limbs inside vehicle at all times during operation.
Sometimes you'll hover around and scan things and nothing will happen. Sometimes you'll hover around and scan things while the Hammerhead slowly freezes, slowing you down. Other times you'll hover around and scan things while getting attacked by Geth. This is made particularly fun by the fact that the Hammerhead is not very maneuverable, its weapons are hard to aim, and its armor is apparently made out of breadsticks, given how many hits you can take before it explodes and you have to restart the mission again from the beginning. Oh, it's saying something when you'll abandon this side mission to go and do the story mission where your beloved crew gets blown up and carried off by space bees, but honestly, it's better this way, guys.
Of course you found that one easy. You were supposed to.
After the Joker, Poison Ivy, Bane, Mr. Freeze, Killer Croc, Harley Quinn, King Tut, the Eraser, Kite Man, and Condiment King, the Riddler is Batman's most feared enemy, thanks to, I don't know, his diabolical intellect, I guess? I mean, it's got to be something, because otherwise he's just a guy dressed like he works at a magic shop who leaves novelty desk lamps lying around in air vents.
That was one of the easy ones.
These Riddler trophies, as he calls them, are meant to prove his intellectual superiority over Batman, but at best prove that he has so little going on in his life that he has the time to place these things all over the city, and at worst, actually lead Batman to his location and get him arrested.
No! Tell me, how did you work out where I was? Do you hear me? I, Edward Nygma,
This hobby of the Riddlers reached its nadir in Batman Arkham City, in which there were 440 Riddler trophies scattered around the map. This must have taken the Riddler weeks of effort and tens of thousands of dollars to achieve, and you'll have to spend countless hours of time that could be better spent fighting actual villainy on getting them if you want to 100% complete the game. I would argue it's a much better revenge on the Riddler for you to just completely ignore his stupid time-consuming side quest and just go off and do cool Batman stuff instead.
So, 5 riddles left. No doubt you left them because they were too hard.
That said, collecting them all does allow you to punch the Riddler in the face, and by that point, you are definitely going to want to. That's for making me collect hundreds of Riddler trophies, you dick. What am I supposed to do with all of these? eBay?
Shards in Dragon Age Inquisition are magical pieces of... You know what? I don't actually remember. They're magical pieces. Aeons ago, these magical shards were scattered far and wide across the Orlesian Empire, sprinkled there by, we assume, an angry warlock who hates how much free time you have. There are 114 of them. Guess what you need to do to complete the side quest named Shard Collector? With these magical pieces of gameplay filler, you can unlock a series of chambers in the magical temple in the Forbidden Oasis, and fight a boss for a handful of loot. So there's your motivation. Well, fine, you think. I'll just go ahead and Google a map of each large open world area and ride my horse to each of the 114 shard locations. It's not like I have anything important on, like closing the giant green sky hole that's going to destroy the world. Oh, wait! Only it wouldn't even have been as simple as that, my friend, because to collect a shard, you first have to climb a hill to find an ocularum, which is a skull, with a crystal in its eye, sure, and then you have to look through the crystal to spot where the shard is. Can't I just collect the skulls instead? There's not as many of them, and they'll look way cooler on my mantelpiece.
In Final Fantasy VIII, Triple Triad is the collectible card game all the kids are playing. It's the fidget spinner of its day. And much like fidget spinners, you'll find people all over the place who want to play it with you, and you'll want to collect the entire set. I don't understand how fidget spinners work. Do you battle them? Never mind. The side quest in Final Fantasy VIII that got our goat was called Queen of Cards, and to complete it you had to play cards with the so-called Queen to obtain 5 unique and special cards. The catch was, to get each unique card, you had to lose a different unique card to her. The other catch was, losing that card to her wouldn't actually get you the card you were after, it would just inspire her artist father to design it, because that's a thing. The other catch was, her dad would give his newly minted card to a random chump who you had to track down and beat at cards to win it off of. The other catch was that the Queen would run off to a random new location every time. What the actual hell, Your Majesty? And all this so you could fill some gaps in your CCG deck with, among other things, a collectible card of your friend who dresses like a cowboy. Is he okay with this, Your Majesty?
Those were some of the most tedious and time-consuming side quests in video games that we are definitely never going to finish because we've got better things to do with our time. Things like clicking on one of these 2 videos. Up here is a video from us that you should click on. It's definitely a good use of your time. Down here is one from Outside Extra, arguably even better a use of your time. And you can subscribe to us by clicking on the subscribe orb here. That's a side quest that we can definitely get behind.
In the arts, realism is where the artist tries to represent the subject as truthfully as possible. In games, realism is where you starve to death after 30 minutes. And this is why I'm constantly snacking. What those 19th century French painters didn't understand is that for certain video games, realism means including realistic elements that some might call excessively mundane, or so annoying you'll want to eat your own hands. And not just because you'll starve to death otherwise. Anyway, please enjoy these 7 times realism was way too realistic in games. First, please excuse me while I consume this snack.
Well, Mr. Morgan, I'd better start cleaning up. You just take it easy. I'll bring your coffee out in a moment.
Thank you, Polly. I have to warn you, though, I am very particular about my coffee. The very best you have, please.
I understand. I'll be right back with it.
Survival horror detective game Deadly Premonition is heavily, openly inspired by TV series Twin Peaks. But I don't remember an episode of Twin Peaks where Agent Dale Cooper ran out of fuel on his way to the Great Northern Hotel and had to walk back into town. Yes, in addition to unraveling the mystery of Anna Graham's murder and tracking down the Raincoat Killer, Deadly Premonition also tasks you with keeping on top of all sorts of tedious real-world things, such as your hunger and tiredness levels. I play video games. Do I look like I know anything about eating well or getting enough sleep? It's keeping your vehicle topped up with fuel that's the most irritating one though, because not eating a sandwich isn't going to leave you stranded in the middle of nowhere and having to traipse several miles back to civilization.
Here you go. The usual. 1 turkey, strawberry jam, and cereal sandwich.
Though, based on that recipe, eating it might leave you stranded with paralysing indigestion. Instead, you'll have to pre-plan your commutes around Greenvale, paying regular visits to the gas station where you'll pay an extortionate $5 a gallon to top up your police SUV. That's twice the national average. That's the real crime going on here in Greenvale. Also, a single gas tank only takes about 15 minutes to completely empty, which implies the engine is some sort of dying star? Look on the bright side though, at least if your car has run out of fuel, you don't have to listen to Agent York's inane chats with his imaginary friend Zach about movies.
Ferris Bueller's Day Off, 1986, directed by John Hughes. That one was so 80s.
That's because it was made in the 80s.
Can I take your order, please? Carl, what do you want? You gotta eat to keep your strength up, man.
Hey, I'll take a number 9, fat boy.
Give me a number 9, just like his. Let me get a number 6 with extra dip.
I'll have 2 number 9s, a number 9 large, a number 6 with extra dip, a number 7, 2 number 45s, 1 with cheese, and a large soda.
We modern humans live in a calorie-rich environment alongside such modern inventions as the Freak Shake and the KFC Double Double Down, which is 2 double downs smushed together with a side of heart medicine. As a result, us modern humans occasionally need to exercise our modern human bodies. And no one knows this hard truth better than CJ of Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. In its quest for realism, GTA San Andreas incorporated physical exercise as the means to keep CJ both healthy and ripped. You had to manage the body fat and muscle mass of your CJ by working out or running or what have you.
That's it. Keep breathing.
Which, I don't know about you, but I play games to escape the reality where I have to do cardio. More like cardi-no. Ow, chest pains. Woe betide any player who kept scarfing down in-game foods and didn't visit the gym. For what CJ gained in chonk, he lost in physical prowess. The mitigating factor here, at least, was that for every 14 seconds of cardio or single rep of weightlifting, CJ's body composition would gain 1% muscle. With results like these, he should have his own line of fitness DVDs and protein shakes called CJX. The CJ stands for completely jacked. The X is meaningless.
I'd better hurry.
In Shenmue 2, you play as Ryo Hazuki, a man with martial arts skills, a leather jacket, and the emotional range of a plank of uninteresting wood.
Do you know of a cheap way to travel overseas?
I'm dying to travel overseas myself, but I don't know of any cheap way.
I see.
Rio is searching for his father's killer, and by the end of Shenmue 2, this search takes him to Guilin in China, near to the village of Bailu, where the killer is thought to be heading. Seeing as Bailu village is about a 2-hour walk away from the port of Guilin, most games would probably handle this with a cutscene. You know, show Rio walking onto the path towards Bailu village, fade down, then fade back up as he arrives there several hours later. And if you think that's what Shenmue 2 did, then clearly you have never played Shenmue 2. Once you set foot on the path to Bailu, it quickly becomes apparent that the game actually expects you to walk there in real time. It's a tedious 2-hour hike made exponentially duller by the addition of Shenhua, a local who somehow manages to be even more boring than Rio, which, we remind you, is no easy feat.
A lot of them are in bloom.
Yes, it's as though the whole mountain is wrapped by the flowers. Let's move on, Yo.
Okay.
What follows is literally 2 hours of the two most boring characters in video game history wandering through the mountains, doing nothing except exchanging inane chatter about flowers and what Japan is.
No. I came from Japan.
Japan? Where's that?
It's an island country, east of China.
In the east.
For, and we really can't stress this enough, 2 real hours.
Let's hurry on.
Yes.
Yes, let's. Don't worry though, there are a few exciting interludes to keep things interesting, like the time you have to gather firewood by collecting individual sticks.
This won't be enough.
Or the time Rio does Tai Chi, the world's most boring martial art. Ooh, this looks promising. Maybe if I fail this QTE, Rio will slip and fall in the river and die excitingly.
Are you okay?
Yeah.
Of course not. Oh well, at least we must be nearly there by now.
We're halfway to Bailu village from here.
Alright, I'm out. Enjoy Shenmue 3, everyone.
If you think modern survival games like Ark Survival Evolved are harsh, wait until you meet ancient open world Don't Starve to Death 'em Up Robinson's Requiem. Appearing on long-forgotten platforms like the Commodore Amiga, Atari Falcon, and Panasonic 3DO, all of which sound like Star Wars spaceships, Robinson's Requiem might not have been the first survival RPG, but it was definitely one of the most brutal. That's not gonna fix itself like in Call of Duty, is it? In it, you played as a Robinson, one of a team of human planetary explorers seeking out new habitable worlds.
For your last hours as a Robinson, you are about to experience thrilling and unforgettable moments.
And by habitable, we mean extremely hostile, basically empty, and where almost all human contact is with other Robinsons who have maybe spent a little too long in space.
Here it comes again. I'm feeling ravenous. All of a sudden.
Not sure if that's the space madness or just really poor dubbing. The worst part was, it's not even necessarily the initial injury that kills you in Robinson's Requiem. It's the fact that if you leave injuries untreated, they can become infected with gangrene, which will eventually poison you to death. Now it says I died from poisoning by gangrene, but I choose to believe I was murdered by skeleton space ghosts. It'll sound much cooler on my tombstone. The bad news is effective treatment often involves amputation, which, in the absence of a well-appointed modern hospital out in deep space, means hacking off the affected limb with your survival knife, accompanied by a scream that sounds almost exactly like the one from fellow Amiga game Rick Dangerous. Tell me I'm wrong. We should have expected as much from a game called Robinson's Requiem, though. A Requiem is a death mass, after all, so you could tell right from the start that this was probably going to end extremely badly. Otherwise, they'd have called it Robinson's Welcome Home Party, We Bought You Cake. Probably wouldn't fit on the box.
Bring the boy around. I want his undivided attention. Where's my son, you fat bastard? Patience, Mark, my boy. All in good time. Warning you, Charlie. If you don't tell me where my son is, you better kill me now. Is that any way to greet an old friend? Stop talking and start listening, Hammond.
PS2 game The Getaway had grand ambitions to be a gritty, realistic London gangster epic. In the mould of Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels, Snatch, or a Christmas episode of EastEnders.
I'm running a nightclub. I've been out nearly 2 months and I'm not in the life. I don't do this anymore. Relax, son. You'll do yourself an injury.
It achieved this in several ways, such as by recreating a significant chunk of central London circa 2002 at a 1-to-1 scale. It was an incredible achievement, not just in terms of the accurate street layout, but also in the hundreds of recognisable British storefronts. That is the first and last time anyone will lovingly model a Dallas chicken and ribs. To go with that realistic recreation of our capital city, the developers wanted to clear away any and all HUD elements from the screen. For example, when you're in a car, you had to work out your route to the next objective by watching the rear indicators flashing.
Yeah, they must be inside.
Something that became considerably more difficult if you smashed them up in a car chase. It's that same insistence on a realistic HUD-free screen that inspired The Getaway's bizarre healing mechanic. Yes, it had recharging health, much like Halo before it, but the difference was that in order to recharge it in the middle of a shootout, you had to find a wall to lean against and then have a little rest, like an out-of-breath pensioner. Hey, I'm sure gangland shootouts are tiring. Take a load off. Now, we're not suggesting it's realistic to be able to heal gunshot wounds by slouching against a wall. What we're suggesting is the insistence on a realistic HUD-free screen led to an annoying system where you had to break off from shooting goons to stand still and watch a guy wheeze himself back to health. Still, as an added bonus, standing around for a bit will also magically clean bloodstains from your ruined suit jacket. So it was probably a waste of time meticulously modelling that British dry cleaners.
Jose?
You want to go hunting?
What are you hunting? An elephant?
I wish. No, I saw a huge bear. One of the biggest I ever saw. I reckon nearly 1,000 pounds.
My God. But you need me to come with you.
Of course. Let's go.
Red Dead Redemption 2 seems to be somewhat in two minds about how realistic it wants to be. On one hand, your horse's testicles will react realistically to the weather. On the other hand, you can craft homing tomahawks. It's how the West was won. Still, most of the time, the game manages to strike a decent balance between realism and tedious reality. Except when it comes to hunting. In the original Red Dead Redemption, hunting was a breeze. You went to a likely-looking location, used bait or rode around until you found a stag or whatever, and shot it a bunch of times. John Marston would then presumably shove the pelt, meat and valuable animal parts down his trousers, where they would sit until he remembered to sell that big buck for big bucks at a trading post.
Options to suit any...
In Red Dead Redemption 2, however, if you want to do a bit of hunting, then you'd better set aside a couple of days, because this is going to take a while. For a start, if you're out hunting for good animal skins, you need to bear in mind that some animals start with bad pelts due to, I don't know, mange or something. So you need to scope out your targets with your binoculars to make sure you're not going to be spending your time stalking an animal in return for a crappy pelt. Then you need to take into account how if you damage the animal's skin, you drastically reduce its value. So you need to use your bow, or your knife, or smaller caliber guns if you don't want to be trying to sell animal pelts with great big holes in them. That's if you can actually get near the animals. Did you even consider the smell that humans emit? Some animals do, so if you want them to not leg it the second you get within smelling distance, you're going to need to pick up some cover scent lotion from the local general store. Anyway, once you've tracked your prey and killed them in the least damaging way possible, you then have to skin the animal, and let me tell you, Red Dead Redemption 2 does not decide that now is the time to give the realism a rest. Horrifying. Now, if you want to sell the carcass or donate it to your camp, you'll need to actually pick it up and put it on your horse and then ride it all the way to a butcher or back to camp. You'd better hope that it doesn't fall off or start to rot on that journey back, because hey, that's something that can happen as well. But then you can drop it off and reap the rewards. $3? That barely covers the cost of that weird cover scent lotion I had to put on. And oh good, now my horse is covered in blood and attracting predators, and so is my new jacket, so I need to go have a bath.
Can I get a hot bath, please?
Hunting. More trouble than it's worth, if you ask me. If anyone needs me, I'll be over here, dynamite fishing.
Henry! Get up now. There's work to be done.
Lots of games let you get drunk, but the effects are usually consequence-free. The screen goes a bit wobbly for a minute or two, and then you're immediately as sober as a judge at a temperance movement rally. But drinking has a more significant effect on your game and longer-lasting consequences in Surf Simulator Kingdom Come Deliverance. That's surf with an E. You're not going to be slotted into a totally tubular 10-foot barrel. I mean, unless you really piss off the king. You'll want to think very carefully before you get drunk in this game. But on the other hand, a few pints with the lads is pretty much the only break from the unrelenting misery of being a medieval peasant. I mean, what else is there to do for fun in Bohemia in 1403? Candy Crush isn't going to be invented for another 609 years?
What are you waiting for, soldier? Fire the trebuchet! For king and country!
Oh, right. Flinging poo at a wall. How could I forget that classic game? There are plenty of positive effects of slight drunkenness in Kingdom Come Deliverance. Drink in moderation and it'll make you more charming, offer you speech options, and allow you to endure more punishment in combat. We call him Two Drink Henry. Overdo it though and you'll wake up with a rotten hangover the next day, which ruins your strength, agility, vitality, speech, and charisma. But while they hadn't discovered the restorative power of the Bloody Mary in the 15th century, presumably because Mary I wouldn't be born for another 100 years, Kingdom Come Deliverance does have a hair of the dog potion. You'll have to haul your sorry carcass out of bed and brew it yourself though. This involves boiling up some St. John's wort and sage and then adding a dash of mint, which is presumably less about curing your headache and more about dealing with medieval morning breath. Remember, you have literally never brushed your teeth. Neck the potion and you'll immediately reverse all the negative effects of your hangover. And I've made some right now to cure the hangover that's affecting my charisma. Well, now I feel worse. But at least my breath is fresh.
Quick! Alarm!
Well, I haven't eaten for 15 minutes, so I assume my health is dangerously low. But before I enjoy this health-restoring snack, why don't you treat yourselves to this video from Outside Xbox, which is about the spammy moves you love to spam because you're such a spammer. And this video from Outside Extra, which is about the ways you got rich quick in video games. Oh, no, my health.
I love video game glitches. I mean, really, who doesn't? They spark your curiosity and invite you to explore the games you love in new and exciting ways. Maybe you'll unlock a cut feature from the game, access new, never meant to be seen areas, see some boobies, or just find some pointless additional amusement out of your beloved games. Either way, glitching is fun and allows you to get more out of the game than intended. But glitches are still glitches. Mistakes in the game's design, and when something isn't intended, that usually means something is wrong. The degree of how wrong, well, that's what we're going to be discussing today. Join me as I take a look into the dark side of glitches and explore the top 10 worst game-breaking glitches of all time.
In the arts, realism is where the artist tries to represent the subject as truthfully as possible.
So then it turned out that nutmeg's actually quite poisonous.
Oh no!
And then she nearly drank it, and that would have been
embarrassing.
Oh,
yeah.
hey, I didn't see you there. Hey, welcome to another cocktail video.
You
with
heard
Outside
nothing.
Xbox. I'm Andy, and I'm joined by Luke and Ellen of Outside Extra. And
Hi.
we're going to help improve your festive season by giving you another great video game cocktail that you can enjoy. I use great in the loosest sense, because this is going to be awful. I'm warning you now, this is going to be basically undrinkable. So stick around if you want to see us drink something really, really nasty, because today what we're making is the Dragon's Flame from Hitman 2. The Dragon Flame, as I'm sure you guys know, you don't need to be told,
tell me.
is one of the traditional beverages of the Ark Society from Hitman 2, who are a society of the world's most rich, powerful and influential people.
Perfect drink for us then.
Yeah, exactly. So
when we're up in the club.
And so my understanding of this cocktail is it's based on a conversation I had with one of the Hitman 2 developers at an EGX Rezzed party last year.
Nice.
It was one of the guys from Sumo Digital who designed the Colorado level of Hitman 1, and I made sort of fun of Colorado for being the worst level in Hitman 1. And he came up to me at the party and he said, "Oh, Andy, off of Outside Xbox, what are your least favourite cocktail ingredients?" And I said, "Well, I don't really like raw celery. Anything with a raw egg probably would be quite unpleasant. And chili, don't like drinks with chili in." And so now this recipe has appeared in the game, which includes celery, chilies, and a raw egg.
So this has literally been made to spite us.
Yes.
Well, no, it's been made to spite you.
Yeah, specifically made to spite
And yet
me.
here I am.
And yet here you are.
About to have to drink it.
About to
Well,
have to
joke's on
drink
you
it,
because
so-
I love raw eggs and chilies and
you?
celery. Yeah.
Good.
it's
Well,
basically
okay.
all
I'm going to
I
read the recipe to you right now.
Okay.
So the ingredients are 1 measure spiced rum. Ellen, can you grab the spiced rum?
Hey, here we
Thank
go.
you. 2 measures
spiciest.
of cognac. We have cognac here.
Yeah.
1 raw unbeaten egg.
Okay.
2 pureed chilies. Half a stick of celery. And 1 human tear. Okay, so we need to start, Luke,
Yeah.
with 1 measure of spiced rum. We can do it with the shot glass.
Use the shot glass for a measure.
It's in the shape of a skull. It's probably what 47 would enjoy.
So one spiced rum and 2 cognac, or the other way around?
Yeah, so 1 measure of spiced rum.
Okay,
And it goes.
got it. Bang.
How does that
Easy.
smell, guys? Smell good? Smell spicy?
Smells good. It smells like we should probably stop the cocktail here if we want
If we
something,
want
something
something.
delicious.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now what?
Good. Now we need 2 measures of cognac. So
Break it.
All right, 2 measures of delicious cognac.
Oh, that's a good glug noise.
Nice pour.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. This is looking bad already.
Well, it's looking quite strong.
It's
Okay.
looking straight. Yeah. Okay.
Very strong.
All right.
Next up, we need 1 raw unbeaten egg.
Nice. Oh, Andy, you didn't skimp on. Look at the colour on these babies.
Premium egg.
Mmm.
The premium egg
Delicious.
experience
I would
going
eat this
ahead.
whole by itself.
Okay,
it's that
so
fresh and delicious.
You want to crack
So
an egg?
just crack that into here.
So if you want to balance an egg on the blade of a knife and then flip it and crack it across the blade.
Yeah, I'll do that
That's
definitely.
Probably what.
I'll definitely do that.
Okay,
Or
fine.
I might just tell you what, not messing around. These.
Right.
Oh,
Go.
got a bit of shell in there.
That's all flavour.
Okay, it's just added extra bonus protein.
Okay, now we need
No time to fish it out.
We need 2 pureed chilies. So if you pass me a couple of those chilies.
Should we do a red and a green?
Yeah,
Mix
why
it
not?
up?
I mean,
It's
why not?
Christmas.
Yeah,
Christmas
oh,
festive.
Christmas colours. I'm going to de-seed them.
From the DC'd expanded universe. Nice.
Really.
Oh yeah,
really,
yeah.
Oh, you can really see yam and
There it is.
just sitting there. Sorry. I'm so sorry.
Andy, you're getting the spiciest bits all over the place.
Just doing a quick de-seed job.
Sure. Okay.
Do you prefer alternating or de-seed carrot?
Oh, expertly de-seeded.
Expertly de-seeded.
It's a bit of a big knife,
You
isn't
need
it?
a sous chef really for this.
Yeah.
But my budget request was denied.
You've only got us.
Said unnecessary expense. I mean, you tell
Well,
me.
and now look.
Yeah, you
now,
tell me.
Yeah.
Who's laughing now? Okay, now we're going to
Right.
pop these chilies into the blender.
Oh boy. Oh gosh. Hit it, Andy.
Anything you want to say for the next 2 minutes, say it now, because it's going to get loud.
Okay.
Yeah!
I'm so upset. Yeah, just jam some cutlery in there. That's it.
Yeah.
Don't do this at home.
Safe and good. It's an old bartending technique I learned in the Sorbonne. There we go. Beautifully
All right,
pureed.
Beautifully pureed. Now we just.
A bit chunky still, but you know,
How are you going to get all those bits out?
be fine.
Okay. Okay. All right. So that all goes in here. It's just. It looks like someone's been sick, but in a really non-committal way. Oh no.
Luke, I need
It's
less.
like someone dehydrated threw up.
I need. Guys, you're not helping.
Look, can you not say these things when I'm staring at the floating raw egg? This is the most horrible thing that's ever happened. And the actual makers of Hitman decided made it so we had to do this.
Yeah.
Think on your sins.
Sumo Digital.
Sumo Digital is all I would say. That's
Go a bit more of that gross pure. That's probably enough.
Let's just. I mean, for goodness sake.
For goodness sake, Hitman.
That don't look good. No, it
No,
doesn't. No,
James.
James, it doesn't.
That don't look good at all. Okay, now we need half a stick of celery in there.
When you thought it couldn't get worse.
Just half.
Ellen,
a
would you
stick.
like to slice the half a stick?
Yeah. Well, that's pretty much half
I
a stick,
really,
but I'll halve it again.
I really dislike raw celery. Once it's been cooked down, it's okay. But raw celery.
Raw celery's
I don't see
lovely.
how it could make it worse though.
Finally, we need a human tear. So
Oh, okay.
we could easily get one of these
We're
by
just thinking about Paddington.
getting Luke to remember the movie Paddington. The bear needed the family as well. It's just the family needed the bear.
Shut up.
Oh god. No, it's okay. We're going to simulate a human tear with some salt
Now
water.
you tell me.
So Ellen, if you could just create a saline solution out of salt and water over there. Paddington is good. He was happy at the end. The family, all the Browns were like,
Not all tears are bad, Andy.
how good Paddington is. All right, that's a good saline solution.
Yep.
If you take a drop of that
Yeah.
and add it to this awful drink.
That's about as much as you would normally cry when watching Paddington.
Yeah. Single tear.
In it goes.
Oh, that was probably that was one of Luke's tears, I think. One of his big Paddington
One of my
tears.
big Paddington tears. And
Well.
so we don't mix the egg in.
No, it's a raw,
It's just a
unbeaten
raw
egg.
egg, and then I think the celery is the garnish.
It's the garnish. So
Oh yeah, it's not going to look good unless we pour it into a glass.
let's just
Oh, the egg's going to go in a minute. There we go. Oh, it all
the big
splashed
drop
everywhere.
of the egg.
What, that's it?
Yeah, and it's garnished with a.
Yeah, James, there's no bit where it gets delicious.
What were you expecting?
There's no hidden extra step.
It looks so unpleasant.
All right, Andy, down in
Look,
one then.
I'm sorry about Colorado. Yeah, I'm sorry. I said Colorado was the worst level in Hitman 1, but it was. Yeah.
Andy, they're just going to put more cocktails in. The next one will be like rat poison.
It was still good. I liked all the levels in Hitman. They were always just a high standard.
It's time to drink, Andy. It's time to drink. Come on, buddy, you can do it. You'll be right.
It's time for work, boys.
Stand back, Ellen.
Okay, no, I'm just going to go for it. I'm just going to take a sip.
Just gonna go.
I'm just going to go for it.
You didn't eat lunch recently, did you?
Quite recently, yeah. I'm just going to go for it though. I'm just going to go for it.
Just go for it, Andy.
Just go for it.
Just any minute now, just go for it.
Any minute now, I'm just going to go for it.
Here it comes. The imbibening.
Oh.
It was on his bit.
Oh.
Tell me what's happening in your.
My throat is burning.
Oh, okay.
There's
From the chilies, I guess.
full raw egg taste.
That is unpleasant. Look at it now. Oh.
I mean, it's neat cognac and rum, so
Yeah.
that's
Let me try some.
okay. I wouldn't recommend it. I'm not going to ask. None of you have to drink this.
Too late.
Okay. Yeah, don't smell it
Wow.
first.
That is
That's the main mistake.
That's an aroma and a half.
You've
Here we go.
ruined Christmas, Hitman. Just say.
Christmas is cancelled.
That was Luke's last breath leaving his body.
Oh no.
Oh.
Hang on. That was so boozy, I didn't feel like I got much of the egg, so I'm just going to go in.
Are you going to go in for another one? That was a big gulp.
My arms have gone all tingly. Oh, Ellen, I think you should have a toot on that.
Shooting pains all down my left-hand
there's
side.
Chunks of chili and
Yeah.
there's
At
like,
least, hey, we deseeded it.
there's like a layer of egg covering my throat.
I hope it's not one of those things you're supposed to go all down. Oh god, it's starting to separate into layers. Quick, Ellen,
Quick,
stir it with
oh
the...
yeah, stir it up because you don't want to miss out on the
Yeah.
albumin. Don't break the yolk though.
You released an albumin recently, didn't you?
How could you say that to me? Why would you say something so distressing when my throat is so full of egg and chili that you brought upon us?
I'm so sorry.
Come on, Ellen,
What have I
quickly,
done?
before it
Yeah,
separates.
these cocktail videos are fun. We'll
Take
help
a
you
little
with
sip.
one.
Just a little
harmless.
The harmless taste.
Is salmonella still a thing?
Not in
no,
our
I looked this
British
up.
eggs are fine.
British eggs are fine to eat raw.
Americans, you need to keep your eggs in the fridge and you can't eat them raw.
Yeah.
Please.
Please, no one else make this cocktail.
Yeah, I mean,
I would say
I'd be amazed if anyone was tempted, but nobody make this.
this cocktail is a specific revenge against me.
I mainly taste the booze and not much else.
Good. I would call that a win.
Yeah.
So put it down quickly.
Wait, I'll try.
Can we break the yolk and see how if that changes the flavour?
One sec.
Oh, there it is.
There it is. Oh, it's left quite a lot of chili on the side there, Ellen.
Oh. Oh God. There's the great taste.
There we go. You're okay, buddy.
Oh, Ellen, I'm
Not okay. Not okay. Have you broken the yolk?
I have broken the yolk.
Oh.
Now it's basically an omelette.
Jeez. Okay. I think that's enough. That's enough of it.
Can I have one more go?
Luke, you maniac. Why?
Just want to know what this.
So unpleasant.
Oh no! I thought it would stir up cleanly, but it's not stirred up cleanly at all. Best not to think about it. Well, now it tastes like breakfast.
What do you eat for breakfast? Oh my god.
This is why I go straight to lunch. Well, that was horrible, Andy.
Yeah.
Thanks for
Right.
nothing.
So there is the Dragon Flame, the deeply unpleasant cocktail from Hitman 2.
God,
that
there's
was
more to give this up.
explicitly designed to be revenge on Outside Xbox.
Which is why you got outside extra domain.
Marks out of 10, everyone, for this unpleasant cocktail.
-5.
-5.
I'm going to give it just a clean 0.
Good. Okay. I wouldn't recommend anyone make this cocktail because it's bad, and also it has raw eggs in, and you probably shouldn't eat raw eggs in many places in the world.
No.
So I'm not going to do a
We did
non-alcoholic
this-
alternative. I can
yeah.
recommend just a nice ginger beer.
Yeah.
That's a nice alternative you might enjoy.
Yeah, we did this so that you don't have to.
So if you don't drink alcohol, maybe just enjoy a nice.
This looks like it's been deliberately made to be consumed by a human.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unlike that.
Unlike this. So
Sorry.
I think the ginger is reacting with the egg.
With the egg, not the chili.
I think something's being baked inside me.
anyway.
Thanks
Thanks for watching. Please drink responsibly this holiday season if you are enjoying alcohol. If you're not, the much more sensible option, ginger beer, is a good choice. And yeah, happy holidays from all of us here at Outside Xbox to all of you except the developers of Hitman 2 for this terrible thing you've done to us.
Why?
See you next time.
The festive season is packed with tough, unenviable jobs like stuffing the turkey or untangling the Christmas lights for the tree, which, bear with me a moment. Nope, there'll be no Christmas lights this year. But no one has a tougher gig than Santa Claus, who not only has to defy the laws of space and time to deliver gifts to literally millions of people in one night, but also has to put up with the following ludicrous ordeals and violent mishaps. So when you're leaving out that milk and cookie for Santa on Christmas Eve, consider these the worst things to ever happen to Santa. And I don't know, maybe make it 2 cookies? Here in the UK, we actually don't leave cookies out for Santa, we leave him a mince pie, as a traditional reminder that our annual festive snack is dried fruit and lard. Mmm. In France, though, on the night before Christmas, they do leave out delicious cookies for Père Noël. So probably that's what French Santa was expecting when he swooped into Paris in the Christmas-themed Hitman mission named Holiday Hoarders. What Santa understandably wasn't expecting was to be cold-cocked by a professional assassin, who then nicks all his clothes.
No one likes you anymore. Santa Claus, you're not real, man. I will not accept your presence here either.
In this bonus mission, Agent 47 returns to the Parisian palace to catch a couple of burglars in the act and take them out, in the brutal Home Alone style spirit of the season.
Santa is a lie. He's a lie.
For maximum points, you must do so with Agent 47 dressed up as a murder Santa. And how are you going to get a Santa suit this late in the day, with all the shops closed? That's right, only by conking real-life actual Santa on the head when he magically materialises in the palace attic, then stripping the Santa suit off his unconscious bod in the same kind of ultra-violent festive greeting that presumably got Kevin McAllister sent straight to therapy when his parents found out. Yeesh. Sorry, Santy. Needs must, though. Oh, and also, Santa has clearly given up cookies given the slim, body-hugging fit of this ensemble on 47's athletic frame. So I guess you won't be wanting this either, will you, Santa? Oh. You're weird, Pie.
Toe Jam and Earl from the Stone Cold 90s classic Toe Jam and Earl are two aliens from a distant alien civilization that independently and coincidentally invented the musical genre known on Earth as rap. But Toe Jam and Earl's sick beats couldn't save them from crash landing on Earth, where they are unacquainted with the foreign concepts of Christmas or jolly old Saint Nick. They are, however, acquainted with the concept of gifts. And so the funky duo stroll around snatching up presents like a toddler on Christmas morning who hasn't learned to read the gift tags yet. That was my DVD box set, Tarquin. No, it's not cute when he does that. Anyway, in their mad lust for hoovering up precious gifts, Toe Jam and or Earl encounters a mysterious figure with a full beard and a blue sack. Spoiler alert, this mystery man is Kris Kringle himself, and if you can sneak up on him and take him by surprise, he'll be so alarmed that he'll drop a bunch of presents. In his haste to flee from this shocking Santa shakedown, Saint Nick escapes on his traditional jetpack, leaving gifts in his wake like a frightened lizard, shedding its tail to distract predators. Poor Santa. And now there'll be no train set for little Tarquin, I expect. In your face, Tarquin.
This hitman wasn't sent by some lowly goldfish. It was sent from a bleak and desolate wasteland by the most ancient and powerful opponent we've ever faced. A hairy, bloated, pagan god. Santa Claus!
Point-and-click heroes Sam the Dog and Max the Rabbit are freelance police, or as I like to call them, armed vigilantes. The thing is, they don't actually seem to have much freelance policing to do, which is why when they're menaced by a giant robot sent by Santa, they have plenty of time for an impromptu trip to the North Pole. That's got to be at least a 7-hour flight. Also, it looks like they drove?
Well, here we are at the North Pole.
When we find Santa, leave the talking to me.
In a convertible. Brisk. Dubious Arctic travel choices aside, it's a good job they showed up, because it appears Santa has been possessed by a demon and has holed up in his workshop, firing a submachine gun at anyone who tries to get in.
Hi, we're collecting guns for tots. Care to make a donation?
Just don't get that thing mixed up with little Tarquin's Nerf blaster when it comes to present wrapping time, okay? As it turns out, though, it's not Santa who's been possessed by the demon at all, but instead one of his poor elves, which explains why he's been spraying bullets at them.
Santa, you okay in there?
Ho, 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 ho! Eat hot lead, you little
As if it wasn't bad enough being unpaid seasonal labour. Eventually, with the help of the spirits of past, present and Christmas yet to come, the gelatinous demon is reduced to a single plate of wobbling jello.
Bummer.
Well, we tried. Get him.
Which is fine until Santa eats that thing that looks suspiciously like the demon he was just cowering from and comes down with a nasty case of demon possession of his own.
Ho, ho, ho! Jello! Sinful.
Santa, no! Don't
Eat the jello! Oh, I don't feel so good.
Great! That's exactly what we thought we'd avoided in the first place. Still, that's what you get when you teach Santa it's fine to eat food left out by strangers. One of the fighters in Clay Fighter 63 1/3 should be familiar. He's got the fluffy white beard and the big jolly belly. He has made a few modifications to his traditional Santa outfit though. Well, he's going to catch his death of cold up in the North Pole. This semi-nude Santa Claus is called Sumo Santa and uses his festive food-filled gut as an offensive weapon. I'm getting horrible flashbacks to the chest burster scene from Alien. Naturally, being a contender in a fighting game, he's regularly going to get beaten up. What's more, a match in Clay Fighter often ends with a violent claytality, and no beloved Christmas deity should be subjected to being kicked in half by an evil snowman.
I'm adding you to the naughty list. Take this. Claytality!
Though we should point out that Sumo Santa gives as good as he gets in the claytality department.
Santa's gonna sit on your lap. Ouch!
Oh! Imagine doing that, and then having the audacity to put someone on the naughty list. Regardless, the game was only rated T for teen in the US and had no age restriction in the UK, suggesting that an entire generation of kids were traumatised by watching Santa get the stuffing knocked out of him. Not to mention the turkey, and the sprouts. All the trimmings, really.
Hey, kid, it's me. Remember me?
Oh, great, it's the crazy lunatic.
What was that?
Oh, nothing, mister.
Hey, I'm, Santa Claus.
If I correctly understand the habits of Santa Claus, this annual gift man lives at the North Pole for most of the year, except for the month of December, when he lives in shopping malls, in an ice cavern made of fiberglass or possibly a log cabin made of also fiberglass. As a kid, your best chance of meeting Santa is at just such a Santa's grotto. I know it, you know it, and so does Rudy, the drunken fake Santa Claus from Rockstar's high school sim, Bully.
There's an imposter going around claiming he's me. He's ripping people off by posing for Santa pictures and charging for it. That's my money!
This jealous fake Santa is so incensed by the presence of a better, realer Santa elsewhere in the town of Bulworth that he directs protagonist Jimmy to go and find the real Santa's grotto and F up real Santa's whole deal.
Come on, step right up, get your picture taken with Santa Claus. Come on, kiddies.
Jimmy has the good judgment and decision-making skills of a child, because he is one, so off he trots to smash up Santa's Christmas castle with a baseball bat. Real Santa can only look on in helpless, heartbroken horror as little Jimmy ruins Christmas faster than a politically charged conversation at the dinner table. Welcome to your new lifetime membership on the extra naughty list. You still get coal, but it's on fire.
But for the first time ever, I share with you the most important story yet. For this, my friends, is how the saints saved Christmas.
The saints from Saints Row and Santa Claus have something in common. They're not real saints. The real Saint Nick was an ancient Greek who died in 343 AD, and the saints are a bunch of murderous criminals. It's clearly that common ground that drives the Saints to come to Santa's rescue in Saints Row 4 DLC How the Saints Saved Christmas. Well, that and the fact that apparently the universe is about to be put on the naughty list by Santa Claus's evil alter ego, Santa Claus.
We don't have a lot of time. Claus is coming.
What?
That's Claus with a W. You really want the subtitles turned on for this one, otherwise it's going to make zero sense. Poor old Santa has been trapped inside a simulation by alien antagonist Zinyak and is gradually wasting away while his horrifying doppelganger is gaining strength.
You willfully break the world's laws. Now feel the wrath of the mighty Claus.
Do those rhymes count as Christmas rapping? That's rapping with a W. You really need the subtitles on for that joke as well. You have to sprint around bringing the festive cheer to this virtual world by ringing Christmas bells and setting up a projector to show holiday classics at the local drive-in, all while avoiding the aerial bombardment from an evil Santa clone.
The holiday spirit, it stings and burns. But that's not enough for the tide to turn.
But all's well that ends well, as Claus with a W is defeated during a massive shootout at Santa's workshop between the Saints and a selection of elves, gingerbread men and Nutcracker sweet toy soldiers. Not that kind of Nutcracker. And as for the boss of the Saints, whose body count must be well into the thousands by now.
And what about me? Am I on the nice list?
You've come a long way since we met.
Very diplomatic, Santa.
Of all the messed up stuff to happen to beloved Coca-Cola mascot Santa Claus, this has to be the most disturbing. In Modern Warfare Remastered multiplayer map Winter Crash, the familiar map Crash is decked out with twinkling lights, a fresh fall of snow, and a big old Christmas tree, in addition to the traditional crashed helicopter. What setting could be more festive for a truly savage deathmatch? The answer is no setting. And this would all be fine and good, except what's that up in the sky? Is it a bird? Is it a plane? No, no, children, it's only Santa's bloody sleigh. In the airstrike on this map, the usual military hardware is replaced with Santa's legendary sleigh, pulled by a squadron of reindeer and raining down fire on the soldiers below. Yes, it looks like the sleigh is dropping gifts onto the battlefield, but the only thing it's delivering is death from above. I, for one, am confident that Santa would be shocked and horrified to discover that modern warfighters had jacked his ride and commandeered his deers and repurposed them as a magical combat aircraft. Surely this was done without official Santa oversight, because the jolly fat man himself would never have allowed his sleigh to have been turned into a weapon of war. Oh no, Santa! Surely not.
Thank you so much for watching this festive video. If you enjoyed it, please do hit the like and subscribe buttons and ring that bell like it's Christmas if you'd like to be notified every time we put out a video. If you'd like to continue the festive vibe, up here we have the traditional Oxbox Xmas challenges. And if you want something that's completely unrelated to Christmas, down here we have some tragic, heartbreaking boss fights from Outside Extra. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Welcome, Red Dead Redemption 2 fans, to this story spoiler discussion. I want to be very clear from the outset, there's spoilers. Gonna have big spoiler letters here.
There they are.
In the Red Dead font.
Gosh, they're intimidating.
Yeah.
They seem to imply, don't watch this if you haven't completed the main story up to and including the end credits.
Yes, I want to see that 100% story completion stat on your screen before you come to this video, because we're going to spoil it all. We're going to talk about...
We're going to ruin it.
Yeah, we're going to ruin it. We're going to talk about 7 moments from the game that we really need to talk about. But in doing so, there are going to be spoilers. Why aren't you listening? I'm saying spoilers. There's going to be spoilers. Do you understand?
It's all right. They get it. They get it.
Good. So we're going to start quite a ways into the game, because the early part of the game is, you know, things are going okay and you're with the gang and you're hanging out and things are all right. But I think the key moment when things really start to go off the rails for the Van der Linde gang is the Saint-Denis bank job.
Yeah, which is way far into the game.
Yeah, we're talking like end of chapter 4.
Yeah, everything before that is still very, very enjoyable, but it feels more like a sitcom. It feels more like, here's the gang in the camp getting up to scrapes.
Yeah,
what
well, there's like
do next.
There's the stuff at the start, in the Coulter chapter where you're all in the snow. And you're like, oh, it's bad. And then it's like, wait, we're like camping out and having hijinks and adventures.
Yeah. And all the music's doing that doing, doing, doing.
Yeah, with
thing.
the mouth harp.
Yeah.
And then they're like, hey, let's rob a bank in Saint-Denis. And then seriousness.
And then it all
goes off.
Let's rob this bastard. Everyone, get ready.
For a start, Hosea.
No! God damn it!
Oh, Hosea! And I really liked how they did for Hosea, because
Really? He got shot.
I know, but
by the Pinkertons.
But I thought it was
to death. He died of it.
I know, but I thought it was appropriately brutal because the whole thing's going sideways.
Yeah.
And I like that they didn't give him a courageous or like martyry death. He was just sort of out in the street, and he looks as if he's about to maybe say something, and then it's just like bang, sort of shot for no reason, and it's like, oh, he's dead, and we can't do anything, including get revenge. And
it's sort of a fair point from the Pinkertons. It's like, we got your man, Hosea, Dutch, come out. And Dutch is like, no, come on, boys. Let's... and they're like, right, fine, bang, he's dead, like we said would happen.
Dutch is like, Hosea, I've got a plan. Don't you worry.
Because it happens, again, back in Valentine, where you're in the saloon in Valentine, and they've got John at knife point, at the Leviticus Cornwall. And he's like, come on out, Dutch, and nothing bad will happen. And
I can. This will be the last time I say this in this video, but I can sort of see things from Dutch's point of view. Because, like, if they're not going to let Hosea go if he comes out, right? Like, I don't know. I don't think there really is a good way out of that situation.
Yeah.
I think Hosea knows that as well. Hosea's not like, Dutch,
Hosea's
you go
sensible.
left, I'll go right. I think he's sort of got a resigned sort of air.
Hosea knows what's up.
Let me ask you, when obviously Abigail is like, it's slightly mysterious where she is in all that, and Dutch suspects that maybe like she's responsible, like for talking to the fence.
Yeah.
Did you for any moment consider that maybe Abigail was doing that?
I did. I considered because John gets captured during the heist as well, and they're like, oh, mighty convenient that John was captured. For a brief moment, I was like, oh man, did John and Abigail sell out the gang?
Yeah.
And because up to that point, the gang is like a dysfunctional family who all get on, and you get to kind of like all of the members of the gang. For a moment, I was like, oh man, this is really going to colour my view of John Marston if he sold out the gang to the Pinkertons.
Yeah.
So what happened with John in that bank? He survived. Unlike dear Hosea and Lenny, the only one they took alive. Why is that, you think?
We're going to talk about this a bit more later on, but there's some confusion from people over exactly how the Saint-Denis bank robbery was set up, because Molly originally says, oh, I tipped them off.
Oh,
but then the Pinkerton agent is like, no, she didn't. And then they're like, but Micah was working with us, but only after you got back from Guarma.
I never thought about that.
So
how did it?
Yeah, I don't think they've really explained that. I mean, I think probably the most logical explanation for it is that...
lucky?
I think the most logical explanation is that they knew the Vandalin gang were in Saint-Denis. They'd already tried to rob the trolley station. The bank is like a giant bank.
Yeah.
And they're a gang of bank robbers.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, real talk, their hideout is literally like 90 seconds away from the centre of town. So
And like Dutch and Arthur have both been running around the city looking at the bank through binoculars.
And they all ride in their fancy waistcoats, going like, we need to keep a low profile!
We need to make some money!
Who knows where money is kept?
I don't think it takes a genius policeman to figure out what's
I
gonna happen.
suppose so, yeah.
Calmly does it, fellas. Act normal.
So the most likely explanation is they just did a not very good bank robbery that wasn't very subtle, but rather than being like, wow, we really did a terrible bank robbery there, they're like, must have been a setup. It's the only explanation.
It's exactly like the Dutch vandal. Everything is someone else's fault. So it's not like, oh, I didn't plan this. Because
no one could accuse Dutch of not having a plan. I mean, he says he has one so often, so...
Well, doesn't Hosea keep trying to talk him out of this plan? And he's like, no, this is the good plan. And
I don't know about Hosea, because for the first bit of the game, he's like, Dutch really seems to have completely lost it. What's going on? And then as soon as you get to the bit in the bayou, Hosea's the one who's like, hee, let's play the Braithwaites against the... What's the other family called?
The Greys.
The Grey. Let's play the Braithwaites against the Greys. And he's the one who's like, hey, let's flog all of this moonshine. And it's like, Hosea, this is a bad, weird plan.
I think Hosea just likes the sort of dramatic elements of it all. He's like, it's like Romeo and Juliet, the families are feuding, and we'll dress up as you're the character of Fenton, my idiot brother, and we'll give out moonshine. And you're like, people are shooting at us. I say this is serious.
I think the humidity gets to him basically. I think basically like when he's up in the mountains and like the air is cold and clear,
his brain is operating. 100%.
And then he's like, "Wow, Arthur, have you spotted them acting real weird?" And then as soon as he gets into the humidity, he's like, "Moonshine, Darcy."
Good evening, gentlemen. Quiet libation.
And then, of course, Lenny.
Lenny, my boy.
Oh, Lenny.
Yeah, Lenny. Oh, God damn him.
I couldn't believe that.
I thought maybe I'd screwed it up and I reloaded the checkpoint because I wanted to try and save Lenny.
So you just killed Lenny twice.
Yeah.
You monster.
But those Pinkertons are invincible while killing Lenny. So,
I mean, fine.
It's
It's not even.
window.
It's not even in a cutscene. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, come on. That's not right, my poor Lenny. I didn't like it when. I didn't like it when Lenny and Hosea died because I liked them, but also I felt like that was two characters who I sort of didn't know what was going to happen to them. Like sort of ticked off. And as the game progressed, you do sort of narrow it down to characters who you sort of already basically know their sort of end point. Bill Williamson. I remember Bill Williamson's along on a mission. I'm like, oh my god. He's not helpful. He's not funny. And I know that he can't die. So it's like, what are you even there for, Bill? If you're not going to even die in an amusing or dramatic way.
Lenny dies, and you're going to get across the rooftops, and then there's that. I think it's quite a good end to their escape is that they just sit in a room for like 11 hours.
Yeah, well, it sort of makes it kind of makes you reflect on sort of non-modern policing, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, none of the police can immediately actually see them right now, so probably they'll be fine. Probably they'll get away with everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually think they probably should have got away with more, seeing as all they have to do is not be immediately in the line of sight of a policeman.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think they would have got away with it more easily if it weren't for the next moment, which I want to talk about, which is Guarma. So, in an extraordinary stroke of bad luck, their escape boat gets caught in a typhoon.
It's a massive boat. It doesn't look like the kind of boat that sinks.
Yeah.
I know all boats can sink, but you know, it's bloody massive.
It's like a almost comedy moment where they're like, "Oh, we made it out of that crazy situation there," and then Mike is like, "Don't like the look of them storm clouds."
Yeah, like any storm that's going to sink that boat would also kill a human who's just in the water. You would think.
Yeah.
But there you go.
But yeah, the whole Guarma chapter 5, was a bit weird, wasn't it?
Very weird.
It's really short, really disconnected from the rest of the game.
Yeah.
We are on the island of Guarma. Javier asked a local. It's a old sugar plantation island. Second island east of Cuba. Is it anywhere near Australia or Tahiti?
It's a bit like they thought to themselves, oh, you know what people didn't like in the original Red Dead Redemption was when we made them go down to Mexico and they weren't allowed to go back up to the northern part of the map.
Oh, yeah.
And they had to play it for ages and take part in the revolution and do all this stuff. So what we should do is make make the mandatory part of the game where you have to go to a foreign nation and take part in the revolution shorter, rather than just like maybe thought to themselves, let's not have a part of the game where you go to a foreign nation and take part in a revolution.
We made it shorter. What more do you want?
It's only 2 hours long. I mean, it's got to be in there.
What are we going to do? I mean, they don't go to help a revolution.
Yeah.
How would that even work?
I don't understand how that would.
Would the Xbox even read the code? I don't think so. The Guarma stuff was really, really odd. I missed the open world at first. Like, it's so beautiful. The setting is so gorgeous. And then
it made me really want Rockstar to do a pirate game.
Oh well, I mean, I don't know if this is the right time to mention what they should definitely do for Red Dead Redemption 3.
Okay, but yeah, go.
Okay, well, I mean, it should so clearly be the adventures of Sadie Adler in South America.
I agree.
South American cowboy game.
Yeah.
Sadie protagonist.
Gauchoing around the place.
You know it makes sense.
Across the pampas. I'm into it.
Yeah, you know it makes sense.
All right, cool.
And then there can be a bit in that game where she briefly goes to New York and gets a job
as a newspaper person.
Yeah, and you can't leave the office, and you're there for about 10 hours. Yeah. And eventually you can go back to South America and have a fun adventure. Yeah. I missed the open world most of all because
you couldn't shave or cut your hair. and your carefully cultivated looks was all wrong.
That didn't bother me because at no point in Red Dead Redemption 2 did I practice self-care in the game or while playing it because I was so absorbed. But the fact that you were just sort of in your camp and you went to the mission marker, at one point I was trying to find Dutch and I ended up getting like lost in this river. It's just kind of clear that I suppose that sort of Guarma environment was not built with the same amount of like care and patience as the enormous open world map in which you spend the bulk of your time.
And also it was so weirdly jarring, the story that they expected you to sort of care about for the time you were in Guarma. It's like you arrive in Guarma and you're like, oh okay, I guess I'm in Guarma now, and someone is like, you got to understand, the evil colonel is monopolizing the sugar trade and the Cuban army are massing off the thing. And you're like, what? And then it's like, well, back to America. And
like 45 minutes later, you're like firing a cannon into a warship, and
you're like declared war on Cuba.
yeah.
What?
I think they made it too big. Like when it begins and you're sort of in chains and you don't have any weapons, I was like, oh cool, this is an interesting sort of break from the main game because you're kind of powerless. Maybe it'll be a little bit more about the sort of core survival thing. Maybe this is going to be a like scavenger rabbit, build a raft or something like that.
Yeah.
But I think it just gets too big. Just the fact that at the end you're taking part in this full scale assault and like between these sort of two warring factions with like, you know, dozens and dozens of like fighters on each side, and it all feels like it kind of balloons out of control. And then for that to kind of ramp up so quickly, and then for them to be like, I guess you boys are all right. Anyway, here's a boat.
Yeah. Oh, let's hope that one day the nation of Guarma will be free. You're like, yeah, is that where we are? Guarma?
Yeah.
Is that what it's called?
I
Bye.
guess. Also, like a fairly, you know, for a game that is like painstaking in its approach to attitudes of the time and like looking at those ideas of industrialization and the good and the bad of everything about the history of America, to sort of have a bit where like these four American dudes like rock up in someone else's war and like fix it in 20 minutes. And you know, sort of obviously actually leave it all on fire and like probably a bigger mess than it was when they arrived.
Yeah.
Felt a little bit sort of just, I don't know, slipshod, I guess.
Yeah, and then it's basically never mentioned again after you finish the game as well. You just sort of sail off and it's like, well, I guess that'll resolved.
If that happened, then like if you went to, obviously Guarma's not real, but if you went to Guarma, there should be like a big statue of Arthur.
Yeah,
be like, oh, he's our
people's hero.
Yeah, our greatest folk hero. They say he killed 200 men in 20 minutes.
Yeah, so that whole chapter was a bit strange, and I'm not really sure why was that?
I had a good run of it, I guess. We ain't even played our hand yet. We just need to put some more money in our pockets.
It contextualized for me where the rum comes from, the Guarma rum.
The popular Guarma rum. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's good that there's probably a big wiki article about that.
Yeah,
it's good. Also, I love how Dutch is like, we've got to get to Tahiti. If we can get to Tahiti, everything will be good. And then you get to Guarma, which isn't Tahiti, and isn't anywhere close, but is out of America. And you know, it is a sort of like tropical paradise that he was basically gunning for, and he's like, and like within minutes, he's ruined it and embroiled everyone in a war. It just goes to show, Arthur should be looking at that and be like, you know what, maybe actually Tahiti wouldn't solve all our problems.
Yeah.
Maybe Dutch doesn't have a plan. Maybe what we should do is just like push Dutch into a hole. A deep hole.
A Dutch hole.
A deep old Dutch hole.
Let's find a Dutch hole and push him in.
Yeah, that's where we get the phrase.
The old Dutch hole.
The old Dutch hole.
Next moment.
Yeah.
Shortly after returning from Guarma, you go to do a mission, but then, you've got tuberculosis. So...
Oh yeah, that's right.
You like fall off your horse and have a big tuberculosis attack.
So like often when I was playing the game, I would set my horse to auto horse, and then I'd like...
Not in Saint-Denis.
Well, no,
you're going to have
like,
a $300 bounty by the time you've reached the end of the street because of all the people you've run over.
Yeah. But like you're riding into Saint-Denis, aren't you?
Yeah.
Or somewhere. And so I sort of set my horse to auto horse, and then I went and I think like unloaded the dishwasher or IRL or something mundane.
Sure.
And when
you came back, you had TV.
yeah. So I thought I'd done something wrong. Because when I came back, I was like, oh, we're here. But Arthur was like, and then he sort of like fell off the horse, and yeah. So I thought I'd done something wrong. I like the way I played the game.
Your horse had automatically ridden through a cloud of TV.
Yeah. No. The way that I played the game, I didn't pay particular mind to eating or bathing or sleeping, and so I did sort of wonder if I'd done something wrong, like if I'd like contracted something.
Oh, because of your awful lifestyle?
Yeah, because of my bad
because
lifestyle.
you never bathe or change your clothes or eat any food, and
Yes.
all you subsisted on was cocaine,
Cocaine,
chewing gum, and premium cigarettes.
Yeah, well, there wasn't always time for premium cigarettes. When you die, it brings you back with quite a lot of health, so why bother?
It's true.
Why
That's a
bother
good point.
eating?
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they've
yeah.
been, Arthur been coughing quite a lot.
And
up to this point.
I think like looking worse and worse. Again, this is a hard thing for me to tell. But if you can, I think if you compare the beginning of the game with the sort of like missions leading up to that, I do think he's sort of. I think they've done something like to just make him look a little drawn.
Well, I think probably it's quite hard to maintain your weight in the game as well. So I think a lot of people will have just been underweight anyway.
Yeah, it's naturally lost. Okay, yeah.
But yeah, like as it goes on, you sort of start to get a like red under your eyes, and
yeah, you get like a bit more bloodshot as it progresses.
And you like finish a mission, he's like, "Well, thanks for saving my horses, friend." You're like, "No problem." And I'm like, that wouldn't be happening if it's like Chekhov's cough.
Yeah.
You got tuberculosis. Really sorry for you, son. It's a hell of a thing.
I thought it was good. I didn't see it coming. I didn't see him getting tuberculosis coming at all. So in that sense, and again, this was kind of a running thread for me. Like I really, really clung to anything in Red Dead Redemption 2 that surprised me because I knew that there were so many elements of the plot that weren't going to be surprising fundamentally. So when that happened, I was like, oh, because I didn't really think Arthur was going to survive to live out the game.
Yeah.
But I kind of pictured him doing more of a sort of heroic last stand, maybe like helping John or getting him out. And it kind of happens that way, but I did like it. It very sort of neatly undercuts the idea when you're playing a video game that the protagonist is basically invincible.
Yeah. I mean, did you realise like when he'd contracted it after you were talking to the doctor?
No, I didn't.
Okay, so yeah, you know the money collecting mission where you go to collect money from the guy called Thomas Downs. He's working on the farm.
Oh my God!
With his wife and son.
Oh!
And he's sick. He's
yeah,
ill.
he's sick and he coughs on you, doesn't he?
Yeah, and you like beat him,
Yeah.
and he like coughs blood in your mouth, basically.
Oh man!
Yeah.
He wants it back. What's not to understand? Where's our money?
And you're like,
I didn't clock that.
yeah. So I remember when it was like, oh, you got TV, and it's like, oh, come on, I bet I got it off that guy during that mission. I went and replayed that mission to see if I could do it without like punching the guy, to see if it was a like an either or situation.
Can you?
No, so even if you choose not to beat the guy, it happens in a cutscene.
Oh,
he like hits him in a cutscene that you have no control over, and then he like coughs the blood on you, and so there's no way of avoiding it, and that's like an actual story mission that you can't avoid. So yeah, so I was like, oh man, that's like from a story standpoint, that's really interesting for the character of Arthur Morgan, that he was doing this like distasteful crime that he doesn't even really want to be doing.
Yeah, talk about paying for your crimes.
Yeah, and it gives him effectively a death sentence.
Not quite instant karma, but
yeah,
pretty close.
And it's
a few weeks.
Like it really reframes Arthur's life after the TB thing. At least the way I was playing it. I don't know if you did the side missions for the monk and the nun in Saint Denis.
No, I didn't. Oh wait, yes, no, I did one for the monk, not the nun. I did the first one for the monk where you sort of free the
yes,
slaves
yeah,
who were being kept by slavers.
Well, the ones with the nun particularly, I think it's the same nun who she shows up in the original Red Dead Redemption actually, but. The ones that you're doing for her, those missions are really helpful to Arthur in sort of coming to terms with his past crimes and trying to be a better man. So like a lot of the missions, you'll do something nice for someone, and then Arthur will like just have a little confession session with the nun, and he'll be like, I'm a bad man, I've done bad things, and I got tuberculosis by beating a man to death who had tuberculosis. And she's like, yeah, but you can't think about it that way, and you've got to like, you're trying now, and that's what's important. And like when I There's a really nice mission that you do where it's the final time you see her.
Yeah.
And it's you remember the Greys and the Braithwaites, the young couple.
Yeah.
The
the
sort of,
Romeo and
yeah.
Juliet,
You do a mission for them where you help them escape and you get them on a train and you sort of see them off.
Yeah.
And they you get all this optional stuff late in the game if you're playing it well, where you get the option to like turn down rewards and things like that. So she's like, I've got this family jewel, I'd like you to have it. And you'd be like, I couldn't take it. You kids get out of here.
Yeah.
And they sort of,
Keep your money.
keep your money, get out of here. And then they sort of go off on the train, and the nun is like there with her bags at the station. She's going off down to Mexico.
Right.
And he's like, oh, hey, how's it going? You know, I'm such a total bastard. And she's like, every time I see you, you're helping people and you're smiling. And yeah, it's really sweet. And she's like, when I see you, I see a person who wants to do good and is doing good and is making the world a better place, and you've got to stop being so hard on yourself.
Man.
And there's like a little entry in Arthur's journal where he talks about how that conversation has taken away some of the dread he's been feeling. And it's really nice.
I guess I'm afraid.
There is nothing to be afraid of, Mr. Morgan. Take a gamble that love exists and do a loving act.
I didn't think Arthur outwardly showed much dread.
Well, I mean, if you continue to do the side missions for Leopold Strauss, the money collecting missions, a lot of that fills out that arc.
Okay.
So a lot of the
Didn't like those missions though.
yeah, I know. Neither did I.
Why
I know.
isn't going back and
I
doing
know.
them?
Neither did I. And I think there was one that I skipped because I'm like, man, I don't want to be doing this stuff anymore. It's like it's bad, evil work.
Yeah.
But then the ones that you do after your diagnosis, they're really set up as these like moral tests for Arthur. So you'll go, for example, like you go back to Thomas Downe's family after he's died.
Yeah.
And you talk to that, and you sort of, there's at least like 2 or 3 more missions with that family where they move to Annesburg,
Right.
and his wife becomes a prostitute, and his son is working in a mine, and they're having a really hard time of it. And Arthur goes and he like helps them out. He helps the son who's having trouble at the mine. He sort of protects him from being like bullied and beaten up by his co-workers. He saves the mother from like an abusive client.
Okay.
And then he like gives them some money, and so they can like move out and start afresh somewhere else. And they're like, oh, we're not going to forgive you. And he's like, I don't want your forgiveness. I don't know what to do, and I'm just trying to do something about it. And there's another mission where you go to collect money, and this woman, she's like, I don't have the money. What do you want, my baby's shoes? And you can be like, absolve the debt, or you can absolve the debt and give her some money.
I just wanted to say the debt's canceled, and here, take this. It won't bring your husband back, I know. You need money and I don't.
Well, you're a good man. I just wish you'd done it before he worked himself into the grave.
Those money collecting missions become like the most moral missions in the entire game, where you're going around helping. You're helping these people. There's one where there's like an army guy, and you go to collect money off him, and you find out he's got like a pregnant Native American wife, and these people are out to kill him.
Right.
And Arthur's like, oh god damn it, fine. And then he sort of helps them, and then they're like, please take this ring, and you're like, I can't take your money. And it's like, it really, that's the sort of real upswing of Arthur's like moral arc, is those missions at the end. And then if you do all of those missions and you're like helping people instead of like taking their money, you get another final mission where you throw Leopold Strauss out of the camp. You're like,
oh
yeah, you're like, you've disgraced this gang. You're ashamed to like the name of the Vandalin gang. Get out of here, you leech. And you like basically pack all this stuff in a suitcase, throw it out, and just kick him out of camp.
Man.
Yeah, it's really good.
I didn't get that. I got the little thing where I can't remember who it is. It must be Charles. Charles tells John like, oh, did you know that Strauss got tortured and never talked, or something like that. Yeah.
But yeah, you like properly give him, drag him over the
boots.
you rake him over the coals.
Bum's rush.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
You and me, we ain't decent. But those folk, they was. Now here, take that. Take that and get lost.
For me, that felt like the most sort of important part of Arthur's like redemption was those missions.
I suppose because I was kind of like rushing through the main story a bit more, I didn't do many side missions post diagnosis.
Right.
So yeah, for me, I guess it was the central like getting John and Abigail out. That was. I mean, to be honest, that felt like enough. Like when I was playing it, I was like, yeah, this feels like this is his main goal.
When you found out that Arthur had TB, did you go and Google what the cure for TB is?
No, I don't know an awful lot about tuberculosis, but I've watched enough period dramas to know that it's
bad news.
It's not good news.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I've seen Tombstone, where Doc Holliday has tuberculosis.
Sure.
And he got tuberculosis in his 20s, I think, or even earlier maybe. And like he had tuberculosis for like 20 years before he died of it. So I was like, okay, well, that's bad, but hopefully I'll have some more time. And then he's like, well, 2 weeks after diagnosis, time to die of tuberculosis. And I'm like, well, that's what?
Yeah, but to be fair, Arthur doesn't really take it easy on himself.
No, that's true. And he's in a very wet climate.
Yeah. Also, the bit where the doctor's like, here's what you should do. You should like go here. Or like try and like go somewhere with this like good air, and I was like, oh cool, maybe we'll go to.
I like New Austin,
where
you were in.
We go to the game equivalent of California because that's kind of what's recommended.
And the time when you're out with Rains Fall, and he's like, oh, let me mix up this secret mix of herbs, and I'm like,
hopes were high.
Yes, finally we're gonna have
the cure.
Maybe it's like because the cure for tuberculosis is a course of antibiotics, so maybe I was like, oh, maybe he's discovered like antibiotics and just like never told anyone.
And why didn't you tell us?
But then he's like, it's ginseng. Eat this ginseng, and I'm like, I've been eating ginseng all game, man. It's not going to cure TB. But I think it's slightly cruel that on the player status screen when you go there, it's like underweight. Your stamina is this. Disease condition, tuberculosis. Illness cannot be easily cured. And I was like, did you see that on the player screen?
No.
Okay, so there's like a. In red text, it says...
Cannot be easily cured.
Yeah, it says illnesses cannot be easily cured. And I was like, so that you're saying there's a chance.
No way. Yeah.
So, but no, there isn't. Why would you say cannot be easily cured? It's 1899. It can't be cured at the moment. They don't have antibiotics.
I guess they were just trying to be accurate. Ruthlessly, historically accurate. Like, technically... all of the molds were there to create a course of antibiotics.
All you need to do is study molds.
Just lick a bunch of moldy logs until you get the right molds.
All you need to do is inject dye into cells and look at which dyes bond to the cells, and then develop antibiotics based off these colour dyes.
It's simple, Arthur.
Simple. Final point on TB.
Yeah.
Did you think maybe that's what killed Abigail at the end of Red Dead Redemption 1? Because you never find out. John dies. 1911, John dies. Then it's like 1914. Abigail's grave is there too, and now you're Jack Marston.
That's
and it's
so
never
soon after.
It's never tells you how she died or why she died. And TB is something that people can live with for a while, and it can be dormant.
Yeah, I mean, definitely plausible.
Do you think Arthur infected Abigail and then she died?
No.
Coughed on her.
Yeah, it's just as a final act, just coughed blood all up.
Yeah. Well, you spend like a good portion of the infectious period of TB hanging around in camp coughing.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, it's possible, but it's just as likely that she would have got TB from someone else, or that she died of some other illness that was neither named nor understood. Like it's just old times.
She scratched herself on a thorn.
Yeah, it's like, well, that's me.
That's me done.
Yeah, like it could have, it could have been anything.
Yeah,
There's the list of ways to.
All right, let's not put that on Arthur.
Yeah, you're absolved, Arthur, of killing Abigail from beyond the grave.
It's one moment, but it's emblematic of a bunch of stuff that happens, and it's when Dutch just kills Leviticus Cornwall for basically no reason.
Yeah, that's kind of it's not even the height of Dutch's, or height is probably the wrong term. It's not even the nadir of Dutch's like long decline into just like losing the plot.
Good. I prefer it this way. You lost your man! Noise, Arthur! Noise!
Yeah, because I mean, even like before the game has started, they're like, "Wow, that Blackwater ferry job." When Dutch just shot that woman in the head for no reason.
You never find out what happened.
It's such a mystery. They like, it all went bad.
All went bad on the boat. Why did he kill that woman?
Yeah.
I mean, by the end of the game, you sort of realise, oh, Dutch is he just kills women. That's just a character trait of his.
When you're in Guava, he strangles that old lady to death.
That's awful. That is horrible.
And Arthur's like, what are you doing? And he's like, she would have betrayed us, Arthur.
What was that? Horrible old crone.
But you killed her.
She was gonna betray us, Arthur. Couldn't you tell?
No.
Well, I got some Spanish. She was.
You keep killing folk, Dutch.
I am just trying to make sure that some of us survive, Arthur.
Well, I mean, I guess maybe. Dutch. I don't know. I just about managed to buy through the game that Arthur was kind of still going along with it and still doing the missions and still basically doing what Dutch says, even though there's a good long stretch of time when Arthur is clearly like, this guy does not have the best interests of me or my friends or himself or anyone at heart.
Yeah.
He always was just a sort of money-grubbing criminal with no loyalty at all. It's just that, he got lucky and was rich enough and had enough people around him that he could sort of disguise that.
Yeah.
If the game had gone on just a little bit longer, I think my suspension of disbelief would have snapped and I'd be like, no, it's not realistic that Arthur is doing this or helping.
Yeah. I think it's it becomes clear as the game goes on that Dutch is really just a massive narcissist.
And an incredible manipulator, the way he keeps calling Arthur son when he needs something nasty done.
Yeah.
And clearly playing on that that sort of fatherhood thing, which is ridiculous because I think Dutch looks about 10 years younger than Arthur.
Yeah, it's true. But yeah, he's such a manipulator, and he's basically taken John and Arthur and tried to sort of raise them as his tools to go and do things. And when they start to think for themselves, then he's he gets mad at them and says they're betraying him and they have no faith in him just because they won't blindly do everything that Dutch tells them to. And that's why I think that's why he latches on to Micah, because Micah's a lunatic who will just do whatever crazy thing Dutch tells him to because he enjoys chaos and mayhem.
Yeah, or to be honest, and I guess we're going to get onto this a little bit more, but by the end, I think Dutch is more doing whatever Micah wants.
Dutch, it's just a girl.
You're right. Micah, it pains me to say it, Arthur, but he's right.
Dutch!
But because Micah is essentially weak-willed and not an impressive man, I think Dutch is able to sort of tell himself that he's still in charge.
Yeah.
Whereas actually, really, Micah's calling the shots for quite a long time, while the game is still playing out. I think Dutch feels threatened by when Arthur and John are sort of younger and really impressed by him.
Yeah.
Dutch is you guys can sort of hang around and I'll raise you up, and he's got all these sort of big ideas and big philosophies. But I don't think it's necessarily them growing up. I think it's the fact that they grow up into very, very capable, very confident, very sort of dangerous and impressive men.
Yeah.
That Dutch just cannot handle that sort of alpha challenge.
The women and the children. And John and his family. I'm afraid I have to insist. I mean, we gotta let them go, because if the Pinkertons come through again, they will kill everyone.
John? Insist?
But I think that's why he's okay with Bill Williamson or Hosea, who's a lot older than him or something. But Hosea just.
Well, they keep someone like Uncle around, who's because Dutch can feel superior to them. But then you see the transformation in John as the game goes on, because when the game starts, John is a real dick to his wife and his son.
Yeah, and he's left them all for a while and hasn't really explained where he is.
But then there was a specific moment during the Shady Belle chapter where you see him sitting around the fire, and he's having all these realizations about the gang. He's realizing what Dutch is like and what the gang is like.
The bit after you fed the dude to the crocodile.
Oh my god.
Yeah, and John's like, where in your philosophy is feeding into crocodiles? And Dutch is near the end.
Read it.
It's in there.
Yeah, it's in there. Yeah, but
you must not have the new edition.
But it's the thing that Rainsfall says, which is that people don't change; they just become more their real selves.
Right.
And that's what I think you see happening to Dutch. At the start of the game. He's like still trying to project this image of like having concern for the group and having
He's like,
concern
like
for
a grand libertarian.
yeah,
He's sort of
it's like
really-
this is what's good for society. Like the encroaching civilization
Yeah.
is that's not what human nature is or what people should be or
We
what I'm
represent
yeah.
freedom and a better way of life
and the natural way of living for human
yeah.
beings. But then like as the game goes on, you realise that he just means that Dutch should be allowed to do whatever he wants all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, that's really what
Yeah.
he wants.
Yes,
And
exactly.
the fact that he dresses so well compared to everyone else, and like the first camp upgrade you have to buy is a new tent for Dutch, and
Dutch never pays in, does he?
never pays into the ledger.
He's more of a teacher.
He's really more of
I
a...
mean, and can you
Yeah.
put a price on that?
No.
Can you put a price on learning?
Yeah, although $500 into the camp, that would be good. Yeah.
Uncle, Reverend Swanson, no more passengers. It is time for everyone to earn their keep.
So going back to the moment where he shoots Leviticus Cornwall, which is a spectacularly bad idea.
Yeah.
And doesn't need to be done, and they don't need to be there at all.
Doesn't need to be done at all. He's like, give us $10,000 and we'll go. And I've got like $18,000 on me at the
Yeah,
time.
right.
And the gang savings are like nearly $100,000.
Yeah.
And you're like, we don't need this money, Dutch. Why are you doing this?
This is the thing about Dutch. Like Dutch is just sort of stuck in this kind of spiral downwards, where he's like, "Man, the heat's on us. We've got to get to a new camp and lie low." And you get there, and immediately he's like, "Well, I mean, we got to lie low. We got to keep this heat off us, but also like." Let's do something really, really wild here that involves not only everyone in our vicinity and all of the authorities and mobsters here, but also gets the attention of all the 5 different factions who are like pursuing us across America. And then he's like, oh no, it's like, and Arthur's like, I don't know if this is a good idea, Dutch. And Dutch is like, well, I don't want to get us into trouble, Arthur, but we need money. And it's like, no, you don't.
Really don't.
Yeah, like, you want to live
What you
this-
need is not another giant gunfight and having to move on again.
Yeah, like you live a healthy, happy life in the camp. You have medicine and food and like the stars for your blanket, and
Javier plays the guitar and you all sing around the campfire. And
yeah,
it's nice.
yeah, and it is nice, and actually like that kind of like commune living that you've got going on is very, very cheap in the game at least, because you know, like, what are you buying, like sort of beans and stuff, and you're holding up a stagecoach here or there, or maybe just like doing a bounty, and it's paying for that. It's paying for everyone in the camp to not have to like go into a life of like grim menial labour or stuff like that. But Dutch just keeps ruining it. I know this is the point of the game. I know this is what's supposed to be, but man, it drove me absolutely insane playing it.
When he shoots Leviticus Cornwall, that ties into what we were saying about he can't handle like challenges to his authority or his self-vision of himself as the sort of the top guy in any situation. So Leviticus Cornwall is like a rich, well-respected man who is trying to mess with Dutch, and Dutch is like, I'm just as good as you, Leviticus Cornwall. You're not better than me. And look, you've got all this stuff, but I've got a gun. So
I'll prove it by shooting you to death. What's also really emblematic of that is all of the stuff with Angelo Bronte,
Yes.
who, let's not forget, is introduced to you because he has kidnapped John Marston's little boy.
Yeah.
And like your focus to begin with is getting that back. But as soon as Dutch sees him, he's like, he's got a big house and he's got nice clothes, and most importantly, he commands the respect of a lot of people. And Dutch is like, wow, he's so dreamy.
Yeah.
We should go to his party and drink champagne and be his best friend and help
then
him.
drown him.
Yeah, and then you know that all works out until he realizes that actually this guy doesn't think very much of him at all, and then Dutch sort of quickly changes tack to like, let's not forget he kidnapped the boy. We should,
We
it's
should drown
Dutch,
him.
You were literally drinking his champagne and like swanning around at his party, like
and he just screws everyone over and then is surprised when it comes back to bite him. Like the whole feud with the O'Driscoll gang, it's like, oh, Dutch and Colm O'Driscoll used to be friends, and then Dutch murdered his brother. And Dutch is like, well, let's not forget he killed my true love. And it's like, in retaliation for you killing his brother. You did it first.
And do we buy that Dutch had a true love?
No. Look at the way he treats everyone ever.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
I mean, there's probably more to discuss about Dutch, but that Leviticus Cornwall moment is a really, it's just emblematic of all of the
Well, one last thing to bring up about Dutch is a theory I've seen online that I don't think I don't think holds much water, but it's interesting in that during the trolley heist in Saint Denis, Dutch falls.
Yeah.
I think he falls off his horse or he falls off the trolley and he hits his head.
Dutch!
And he's like clearly taken an extremely bad hit to the head.
Right.
And a lot of people are like,
oh, you think that
his personality changes
hurts
after
him,
that?
befuddles his senses?
Yeah, well, he just
Maybe.
bit of brain damage, and that's why he's acting so strange for the rest of the game. But I
he's
mean,
not acting that strange. He doesn't do anything that's out of character.
Exactly, it's all in part of the same pattern. And he shot that girl on the ferry before the game even started. But I just thought it was interesting that they do give a lot of attention to the fact that he's like, whoa, I'll be fine, but he's like seeing double and
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, like bearing in mind Dutch's personality, everything he does after that point could also be explained by the fact that he had an embarrassing accident in front of all of his, in front of all of his men.
And needs to
he's
save face.
I need to shoot Leviticus Cornwall to show them all that I am the biggest, sexiest wolf in the pack.
Yeah, Dutch is a moron.
He's the absolute worst.
The other thing about Dutch that I want to bring up was the scene where you and Dutch are on the edge of the cliff, and he's like, I've got a plan, Arthur, this is a good one. And then he gives the speech about how you can't defy gravity, and then he jumps off the cliff.
You can't fight nature, Captain. You can't fight change. You can't fight gravity.
And you fall into the water below, which is exactly what he does at the end of Red Dead Redemption 1.
We can't always fight nature, John. We can't fight change. Can't fight gravity.
Oh my god, is it like the same?
It's the same speech.
What?
He even says, I have a
remember
plan,
that.
John, this is a good one. And
which is pretty funny coming from Dutch.
Yeah, and he's like, my plan is to fall backwards off this cliff and die.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
he does,
to be
and
honest,
that's how he dies.
that is literally the best plan Dutch has ever had.
Yeah, but those are Dutch's last words in Red Dead Redemption 1. It's like basically an exact mirror of the scene from before.
Wow.
Whereas before it worked because they fell into the
Nice.
river and they escaped. This time he just falls to his death.
Our time has passed, John.
The ending.
The ending. Wait, which ending?
The first ending.
The first ending.
Yeah, before the epilogue.
All right.
So,
yeah.
What did you think of the ending?
My main thought of the ending was like, I cannot believe that the game killed my horse in a cutscene. What the hell?
Yeah.
R.I.P. Maple Stirrup.
Yeah.
That was-
R.I.P. Horson Senior.
I was
Devastated.
seething. Just
Or seething. Both.
Yeah, both of those.
And that little tender moment where he's like, "Thank you," to the
Yeah,
horse.
like
the horse
that
is like, "I love you, Arthur." Yeah. Did you hear that as well?
I heard that
Yeah.
as well.
It's good.
And you know, that is a nice tender moment. But also, I'm like, well, yeah, thanks game for giving me that tender moment. But also, it was your dumb idea to kill the horse.
Yeah. Also, that horse was pre-order DLC, so
So you owe
You owe me.
Andy some money. You owe him one horse.
yeah, right.
That's
Maybe
a really good
maybe
point.
some Red Dead Redemption Online currency. I don't know. But yeah, you've literally stolen money from me, Rockstar.
What would be good is if there was an even more expensive edition where if you did that, the horse got up and was fine.
Oh man, any
Yeah.
amount of money, Rockstar.
Any amount, yeah. You know, in retrospect, it makes sense because you don't know at that point that you're going to jump forward 5 years, and I guess it maybe wouldn't make sense for you to like still have the same horse.
Yeah.
And you do pass on some possessions like the hat and the sort of satchel.
The
and stuff.
satchel.
Which you know is kind of sweet. So I guess they didn't need to also like pass on a horse. Do you think if you get to that scene and you don't have a very good bond with your horse, like say you're just using a sort of like day horse, little runaround horse, do you think you still get that like thank you?
I think you probably do. I think he likes animals.
He likes all horses.
Yeah, and he'll be just like, thank you for walking up this hill and then dying.
For your loyal service
of
Yeah.
the last 8 minutes.
Yeah.
I
couldn't believe it.
But yeah, so
I took such care to get a horse with incredibly, like a massive health reserve. Because my horse lived a hard life. Like was always like stacking it into a rock or a tree or falling down a gulch. Because like, you know when it's like, oh, here's where the route goes.
Yeah.
To get to here, and you're like, mate, I'm just going down here, and then suddenly your horse is upside down. Like its spine is full of rocks. And stuff.
No, I had the same horse from the very almost the very beginning of the game when you first get the DLC horse, which is that mission with Hosea where you go out. I had the same horse for the entire game, so it was very impactful.
It's really harsh.
So yeah, the ending of the game, you discover that Micah is a rat. He's been working with the Pinkertons, and the camp is all on fire and everyone's shooting.
The camp
each
at the
other.
end is so sad.
Oh, what the
Like
crazy?
just the final camp.
Yeah.
Just the way that like you walk in and like you can no longer get medicine or ammo or anything.
And it feels like it's always raining.
Yeah.
I don't know if it is, but it just feels like it.
There's not a lot of like sing-songing at that point. Is
Yeah, there isn't.
There's an awful lot of Dutch just hanging out in his little cave.
Yeah, and Micah and his two weird mates that he's brought along.
Cleet and Big Cleet. or
Yeah,
whatever.
just hanging around.
Yeah.
Being weird. But then, so you're escaping with John, and you get that choice whether you want to go back for the money or to help John escape. And I mean, it didn't really seem like a difficult choice to me.
It didn't seem like a difficult choice to
No.
me, but I did not at all realise that that was like the choice of the game, and that was going to have an enormous impact on how the game ends. Like, it seemed pretty obvious to me. I was like, oh well, John, probably help John escape.
Yeah.
Don't need the money. But on the other hand, there were quite a few points in missions where it would offer you a choice near the end, and it wasn't really a big moral choice. It was more or less, do you want to skip the end bit?
Yeah.
So when they're like, oh, hey, we never went fishing in the end. Do you still want to go fishing? And
Sure,
you're like, no.
Oh,
And
so you think it's either end the mission now or have an additional bit of mission where you try and get the money?
Honestly, that was my first instinct.
Okay.
It was like, should we just help John escape, or should we pop back and do a little bit more mission? So that was my first thought. But then I was like, well, you know what? Regardless, like, we should do what John says, because the whole drive at this point is to help John.
Yeah, exactly.
So that was my thought process. But I was frightened by how nearly and how easily I could have made a terribly wrong choice there.
Yeah, well, I mean, there are sort of three endings there, I think, and they're not really that different, the two, if you choose to go off with John.
Okay.
Either, it depends on your honor level. So if you have a low honor level, after you have your fist fight with Micah, he screams, "You are not better than me," and shoots you in the head.
Damn you. Damn us both!
Which is obviously bad.
Yeah.
But if you have a
And
high...
wrong.
Yeah. But if you have a high honor level, you get the nice ending where
You die of tuberculosis on a cold and lonely mountain.
Well, no, but you are sort of turned towards the sunrise, and you're just like watching the sun come up, and you're just like reflecting on your cowboy life, aren't you?
It's probably
And
too
like-
bright.
It's not too
Probably.
bright,
It's
it's
probably.
nice.
TV's probably made him very photosensitive.
I think there's a line earlier in the game. There's a line earlier in the game where he's like,
"Roll me the other way."
He's like that. He says that's how he wants to die. He's like,
tuberculosis lonely on a mountain.
No, like face me towards the sunrise, and I'll think about the times we had. And stuff. It's
Okay.
nice. He's just reflecting on his life, and it's
No, I know. It's a nice poetic. It's probably as good a death as a sort of lawless cowboy.
yeah. But if you go back for the money,
Yeah. What happens then?
then you just have a horrible fight with Micah in the mud, and you're like, we're both awful people, and then he stabs you in the back as you're crawling through the mud, and you die.
You're dying, Black Lung! Yeah, you're dead. Inside, you're dead.
I thought it was quite effective, the good ending, where you're on the hill and you're just looking at the sun, and you've helped John get away. It's slightly undercut by the fact you know that John will eventually get gunned down.
It's the prequel problem.
Yeah.
It does. The game, like fundamentally, I think, does not really manage to overcome the fact that you know that Arthur's not going to be around. You know that John will, but also that he won't, sort of.
Yeah. If you hadn't played Red Dead Redemption, it would feel like a really hopeful ending. Like you'd really created like a chance for the future.
I kind of wish I could have erased Red Dead Redemption 1 from my mind before playing it. That would be amazing. Although then I would feel a bit cheated that we don't get to like put Dutch in a Dutch hole.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Like, why did they keep this Dutch character alive?
Yeah.
Terrible idea.
Where's John?
I tried.
He didn't make it. That patrol killed him. We had to run.
Come on, let's go. Before another patrol turns up.
And I mean, that was really the final straw for Dutch's character for me, was when he came back and he was like, John died, there's nothing we can do. And I was like, oh really, mother? Well then how come I played Red Dead Redemption 1?
Yeah, that's true. I didn't even, but the thing was,
it's sort of plausible because the whole way, again, you're thinking like, how is it that John ends up under the thumb of the Pinkertons? Maybe
The
it was
Bureau
at
of
that
Investigation.
point. Maybe it's when he gets like. Although, yeah, Dutch says that he's died.
Yeah, he's dead.
He's
Nothing
dead.
you can do about it. It's the second time Dutch does that because like you're
in
robbing
the
that, and also when you're robbing the oil and tar company, and you're there like trapped, and you're help me, Dutch, and he's like,
you see his boots be like,
and then
Dutch out.
You have to get saved by Eagle Flies, who then gets killed saving you.
I was very frustrated how when you leave that room, like having been so clearly betrayed by Dutch, Arthur's like, Dutch, you betrayed me, and Dutch is like, I didn't. And it's like, well,
good point.
well, I don't know what to say to that.
You ran away? Oh, I did no such thing. Don't be a fool.
Bless Arthur. It was kind of interesting, really. Like we talked about this a little bit while we were both playing through, but I know that neither of us were particularly excited by the prospect of playing Arthur Morgan in Red Dead 2 based on the trailers and everything.
Yeah,
because the trailers, I think, make Arthur Morgan look quite a lot meaner.
They focus almost exclusively on the money collecting missions where you're being a dick to people.
Yeah. And I guess maybe that was to sort of set the tone of a sort of like hard and flinty, lawless West, which I kind of get. But it's weird now to think back on that. And actually, I would never have guessed that Arthur Morgan's defining character trait is that he's hopelessly, adorably naive.
Yeah.
And you know, like, he doesn't have any subterfuge, and like there's not a devious bone in his body, really. So actually, when he is, you like to think that when he's betrayed so clearly by Dutch and yet makes it out of that situation, he would not mention it, but file it away and think, I know I can't trust Dutch.
Yeah.
I will kill Dutch in his sleep. I'll roll him into a Dutch hole.
Into a Dutch hole?
But you know, Arthur, like, bless his sweet heart, he gets out of there and he's like, but you betrayed me, didn't you? And Dutch is like, no, I didn't. How about this? Here's my hot take. I didn't.
Just have a little faith, Arthur. The game does a good job of like showing you the gang, the good times, which go a long way to explaining why you would try and explain away the terrible things Dutch does. Like, there are some really nice moments, like when you go fishing with Hosea and Dutch. Or,
yeah, that's great.
One really nice sort of bonding moment for the gang was when they're all in the carriage going to the mayor's party.
We are ridiculous, utterly.
And they're all dressed up and they're all like laughing about how silly they look and drinking champagne together.
And then I really liked how they're on the way back. They're like, it's like every time I've ever gone out to anything where it puts on the suit, like on the way they're like, I am literally James Bond, and then on the way back I'm like, stupid tie, so itchy and uncomfortable. Money is stupid.
Yeah. No, that was a really nice moment. And when you see moments like that, you can sort of see a bit why Arthur would try and explain away Dutch's behaviour as like, oh, it's not what I thought. You know, Dutch is a good guy. Okay, the epilogue.
Yeah, oh boy.
Pretty long, hey.
Pretty long.
For an epilogue.
I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that I think the epilogue was too long. Quite a long way.
Yeah.
I didn't, I enjoyed all of it. It was all really, really
I see
cool.
what they were trying to do and like why they wanted it to be that long, but I really could have done without the start bit on the other guy's ranch, like being so long.
Oh yeah, that was really punishingly long.
Yeah.
The reason that I didn't mind the farming, I quite liked milking the cows and mending the fences and all the like sweet sort of like fixing up the place.
That's just a good time.
That's just a great time. All the montages were really nice. There were a lot of like really cute montages in the epilogue, and there were a lot of sweet moments overall.
Yeah, like once you're out of the initial farm and you're sort of doing stuff in Beecher's Hope, that was great. Like the house building sequence was awesome. I loved it. It was such a good choice of song, and the actual gameplay bit where you're hammering in time to the music. And
well, let me have a rule and a saw and a board and I'll cut it. I'll climb up a ladder with a hammer and a nail and I'll nail it.
Also, I really, really like the whole sequence where John and Abigail go into town and he proposes to her.
That's so sweet.
So sweet.
Getting the photo is the most adorable and pure thing. I love it.
I love it. And you can choose. Which pose did you choose?
I'm so glad you asked.
Good.
So I went for the Wild West backdrop because that's what Abigail likes the most.
Same.
But I wanted Paris at night, but hey, we're proposing. Let's
do what the lady wants.
I went for that, and then for the pose, I didn't like any of the ones where like someone sat down and someone's over them. They all feel like a little. I don't know. Patriarchal is exactly the
I
word.
wanted one where they were like displaying genuine affection for one another, so where they were like touching.
Yeah,
each
I
other.
think I went for the one where they're both standing up, and I think they're holding hands and they're smiling.
Yeah,
there are two where
I think we probably had these.
exactly, very
yeah.
so. The best one.
Yeah.
There are basically two standing up options, and one is where they look happy and together, and the other one's where they're both just like
serious,
staring into the middle distance, looking like badasses.
How's this?
I really thought that the game was going to drop you off as Sadie for the epilogue.
Yeah, I mean that would have made a lot of sense.
It would make more sense because Sadie's the one who has that drive to hunt down Micah.
Yeah, and also it's kind of out of character for John Marston to be going around doing all bad stuff.
Yeah, it makes it slightly difficult. Oh man, also like just while we're on the subject, you know what's some absolute BS? As you know, in the credits, like everyone, when it gets to the voice actors, everyone's got a little like it's like Dutch, the leader, like Arthur, his like first, second in command, his lieutenant or something like. And everyone gets a little epithet, I suppose is the word. And when Sadie strolls past, it's like Sadie Adler, a widow. Oh, what? We're defining Sadie, the best character in the game, by
her
the
dead
her
husband we never even see.
died off screen at the beginning of the game. Are you joking?
Absolute nonsense.
It should be Sadie, owner of the best coat in the game.
Sadie Adler, the best one.
Sadie Adler, yeah. Sadie Adler, holy crap, look at her hat.
Sadie Adler, why wasn't she the protagonist?
I used to, when there was a little essay on the map, I'd be like, that's going to be my dessert.
That's my treat.
For doing a little D or a U mission. Like, I'm going to muscle through those.
And then the sweet treat.
And then the sweet treat of a great sort of romp with Sadie who can't stop killing.
I don't much like getting robbed by no one. Come on.
The main reason that I thought that the epilogue was just a little bit too long was because when I reflect on the game now, Arthur feels like weird and distant, almost more like, just because of the way that your mind, that memory works, and because of the way that time sort of stretches and you remember the most recent things and the last things as being the most significant.
Yeah.
It feels more like Arthur Morgan was a prologue.
And then John Marston,
Because that's the length of a full game.
Oh yeah, it was about 7 hours, the prologue. Epilogue. And it's you spend so much time playing as John that you sort of forget Arthur a little, which is...
Proportionally, you spend like way longer than that as Arthur.
Yeah.
But the most important end game stuff is you're John.
And you do so many missions with Sadie, which is great. So you obviously remember those because Sadie's brilliant.
Yeah, and so by the end of, I think by the time the credits roll, you're like, well, this was basically another game about John.
Yeah. One thing about the epilogue I want to talk about was the difficulty in getting John Marston to look right.
I know this bothers you because
Yeah.
the fashion and
it's
the grooming
hard
is
because
important.
you start the epilogue and he's got this huge, like, unstyled beard, and he's wearing like a flat cap, and he looks like some sort of Victorian urchin or a member of the Bay City Rollers or something. He's got like flares on.
The flares and the tiny waist.
You
looks
know,
like a Bee Gee.
You know what he reminds me of when he runs, wearing those flares?
What?
Waluigi.
Yes! Oh my god, absolutely.
There were bits in the epilogue where the game was trying to do something dramatic, but like when you leave the ranch for the first time and you like get on your horse and you're supposed to ride off across the fields, and it's playing like some sort of song.
Yeah.
I like immediately turned the horse around, got off, went back into the cabin and shaved off the beard down to a stubble because it looked so wrong and I didn't want to spend any more time with the wrong beard. But then, eventually when you unlock all the clothing options and stuff, I was able to finally put together I know this isn't important to most people, but like the look of John Marston was very important to me, and I was able to craft, because you try putting him in the clothes that you had Arthur Morgan in, it doesn't look right because he's got a different frame and he's just a different character. You can't just dress him up like Arthur Morgan and expect it to look good. And so I eventually got the look that I like. It's a slightly longer beard than he had in the original Red Dead Redemption. It's a longer beard, like the handlebar, the mustache, and it's basically just a slightly fancier version of his rancher gear. Cool. So it's like the shirt and the waistcoat, but then better trousers, good boots, a better hat, some nice gloves, and it looks good, and I'm really happy with the way I got him to look now. But it took ages, and I was like, why does John Marston, this character who I think looks great in Red Dead Redemption, look so weird and bad?
I know, he's got like a funny sort of posture.
Yeah.
And
bandy-legged.
Yeah, you sort of dress him up, and then you kind of like, I chose all nice clothes for him, and then I'd sort of play for a few minutes and be like, no, man, this looks weird. I couldn't find a good coat for him. Couldn't find a good coat for him at all. And which was frustrating because, like, for Arthur, the sort of way that I dressed my Arthur, the coat, the filthy, blood-stained coat, was absolutely like the core of his.
Oh yeah, I
aesthetic.
never really wore coats as Arthur. I tend to like waistcoat and long sleeves.
Oh yeah.
So which I like as a look, and I'm carrying on into my John. So it's like a continuation. This is a lot of cowboy fashion talk, but it's important. It's an important part of the game.
It's an important part of it. The game is mostly horse maintenance and waistcoats.
I agree. Last point I want to talk about is what I call the Marston Vendetta ride.
Nice.
You go up into the mountains. Mm-hmm. You take it to Micah.
Yeah, you go up there with Charles and Sadie, and I could not enjoy that mission because I was stressing out so hard about Charles and Sadie. because
they're not in Red Dead Redemption.
I know, and also, and they're like, but
she does get shot. Sadie, doesn't she?
She gets stabbed. Yeah, Charles gets shot.
Yeah.
So, like, before you go on the mission, Charles is like, you know what? I'm thinking I might retire and get out of here and live a good life. And
Live a
Sadie's
good,
like,
long
you know what?
retirement life.
I think I might also get out of here and never be mentioned again by you, John Marston. Yeah. And so you have immediately, I'm nervous. Yeah. Because that's like in a cop show where someone's a few days from retirement, like where they've got a goal and a vision that's like, oh, I guess you just know they're going to be dying. Be like, guess I never made it to Canada.
You all right? She's fine. You don't look too fine. Come on.
But like, honestly, that ending made me reflect hardest of all on this like prequel problem thing that I keep like banging on about, because I was like, I'm so worried about Sadie and Charles. Imagine how much emotional power this ending could have if I didn't know what was going to happen to John, and if I didn't know what was going to happen to Micah.
Yeah.
And to Dutch, dare I say?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then so I was just stressing too hard. Also, did you find that final mission difficult? I found it quite difficult.
It was.
I
died
like 4
I did
or 5
die
times.
a bunch of times.
I hate dying in a final mission of the game. It should always.
Yeah.
It should always make it the most explosive and fancy thing, but you should only do it once.
There's very little cover in the initial trek up the mountain, and then when you get into the camp, there's people at all angles. There's initially no cover, and then there's loads of cover that you absolutely have to use.
Yes.
In the camp.
So
you have to sort of slightly change your
shoving the
tactics.
Deadeye tonics to get through that.
Just you left, is it? Yeah. Just me.
I mean, initially, the bit where you're going up the mountain is super badass. Like the music's great, and John is like, he's all decked out
Arthur
in
never
his.
gets as good musical cues as John does.
No.
John's the one who gets all the kind of like electric guitar, like sort of
Yeah. It's true, but I mean, it did remind me slightly of the mission where you storm the Braithwaite Manor with the whole gang.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
And you're all like approaching on the house.
Yeah,
and
the
everyone's
camera's
like,
zoomed way out because you're part of a huge badass gang.
And that was like, it was a similar feeling of sort of badassery as you're making your way up the mountain.
Hello, Scarface. Did you miss me?
But yeah, so you make it to the camp, and Micah is holed up there, and you have your Micah fight, and you know, not quite getting the upper hand, you know, not how things are going on, and then who should appear but bloody Dutch.
The D-man.
Bloody Dutch Bandit. DVDL. Yeah.
As he likes
As
to be
he-
called.
as-
Yeah, I'll tell you what I liked. I liked how Dutch killed Micah.
You shot me.
Well, he didn't. I mean, he shot him. We killed him.
Oh yeah, I suppose so. Yeah. I liked.
But it was like he was having a hard time deciding whether he should side with Micah or all that's good in the world. And
I
I'm like,
know,
come on, man.
I know.
Even at this, you've been living in a shack with Micah for 8 years.
Do you know what I did like?
Or whatever.
What I liked was that when you see Dutch and he's sort of living on the mountaintop.
Old
and,
Big Bear.
Yeah, old Big Bear. And you don't, he likes the honey. And you don't even know that he is in the mountain, which is a very clear suggestion that his powers and his influence have basically been reduced to nothing. And now he's just like Micah's puppet, like ventriloquist dummy or whatever. So initially, when the main game ends and like before the epilogue, I was really sore about it because I was like, that's so annoying because Dutch is going to ride off and he's got all that money and he's going to live a sort of happy and wealthy life until we finally track him down in Red Dead Redemption 1.
Yeah.
But it made me a lot happier about Dutch's arc to find that actually at the point where he leaves you in the main game and betrays you, he's basically, I don't think he's like ever happy or rich really again. Like he's got all that money but no friends.
Yeah.
He's got, and I think in that moment, Dutch is realizing a little bit of like what he lost and what he had and what he. I think Dutch grows a bit emotionally then, and that's why he's like, I've had it with you, Micah.
Yeah, but then he's right back to being a total asshole in Red Dead Redemption 1.
Yeah, totally. But by that point, he's got more friends, he's got more money, he's got more of a gang. Like that's what he feeds off.
Yeah.
So I think he only has that sort of self-knowledge when he's like hit rock bottom.
But yeah,
and you've hit rock bottom when you're hiding in like a little outhouse at the top of a mountain.
Yeah.
And like
with
and
Micah,
and
who you know
Micah's-
smells terrible.
Oh my god, he must smell awful. And you know that Micah's the one who's like in charge, and it's like, oh, here, Micah's famous outlaw Micah has a big gang.
Yeah.
Like, that must hurt.
Say something, Dutch! Say something!
I ain't got too much to say no more.
But I've really liked the specific moment when, after you shoot Micah, who incidentally I shot like 8 times in the crotch, and then it was like 8 times in the crotch, and then just a fan up the chest.
Yeah.
So-
If you're dual wielding, you can get 12 in the crotch.
Oh yeah, you say yeah. If you really want to just demolish that crotch.
Yeah.
But it was just a really nice moment where he just looks at you. He's like.
Yeah,
and then tries to walk off.
Yeah, he seems he's like
yeah, he's like, didn't even hurt.
Yeah, he's like, oh,
like, is that the best idiot? That's like takes 2 steps and then just.
Oh, we're doing this,
face
are we?
plants. It's like, if he'd said anything, it would have been like, real mature.
Yeah,
real mature, John.
Also, stop calling him Scarface because that's a cool nickname, Micah. You're massively self-owning by being like, hey, Scarface.
Yeah.
Like, joke's on you, Micah. That's
cool.
a badass nickname.
Like, Black Lung is a bit insensitive.
Yeah, Black Lung's
tuberculosis, but Scarface. It's good.
I think, on reflection, like it felt like a triumphant moment, and also it was really, really great that Sadie and Charles do survive.
And you get $20,000.
You get an immense fortune. You pay off your mortgage. That's nice. On reflection, riding out to get Micah probably wasn't the right thing to do because in the credits we see that it's what leads the Pinkertons.
Yeah, it's the inciting action that leads the Pinkertons to
the Marston front door.
Yeah.
And you know what? I think I probably could have done without all that in the credits. I probably didn't need to see in exquisite detail exactly how they find him and how quickly and how soon.
It does slightly undercut the sort of hopeful nature of the ending to know that it's all
and
gonna-
like everyone played Red Dead. You sort of know. If you haven't played Red Dead, then those bits in the credits aren't going to make any sense at all.
Yeah.
So I think just let us have a little bit of a happy ending, especially because it makes you think about Red Dead 1 and you know that at the end they really like get the better of John Marston.
Yeah.
He doesn't manage to get his son out of the life, and Abigail dies shortly after.
Yeah.
And like there's really nothing happy to be pulled from it, except
Uncle doesn't die of his terminal lumbago.
Yeah, exactly.
He gets shot to death. So that's something.
Man, I could not believe that the epilogue made me like Uncle.
Oh, did it? No, I hated him.
Oh, really? No, I was like, what's happening in my heart right now? I'm having like a Grinch transformation.
Man.
But I was like, oh, I sort of like him. I like the way he doesn't do any work. And when he gets kidnapped, it's like, oh, that's nasty.
Yeah, that was sad.
He's
But
suffering.
then, you're riding back from Blackwater with him after buying a house, and he's like, you suck and your wife hates you. And I was like, counterpoint, dynamite.
You mean she left you? Oh, I never thought she was a smart woman, but...
And then the game is like, you failed the mission because Uncle's horse died. I'm like, yeah, that is the correct priorities. Okay, final thoughts.
Yes.
I think it's a spectacularly bad idea for Pearson to have a picture of the Van der Linde gang that he was a member of on the wall of his general store.
Yeah, also, where did that photo come from? Because when John and Abigail go to get their picture, it's like, oh, a picture, I don't know. And it's like, oh, no, but you know, like...
Well, you know, Arthur has a camera, doesn't he? So.
Yeah, I suppose so,
Yes,
yeah. But yeah, you're right. That is... Yeah.
Very
also,
bad.
I feel like the game was a little bit unfair to Pearson, who sort of got out while the getting was good.
Yeah.
You know, which was clearly the smart thing to do. Arthur's trying to tell everyone to leave, but then it felt like in the credits when you see Pearson, he's got a sort of sad look in his eye, and it's like, yeah, you abandoner. You know, he lived that criminal lifestyle for a long time, and now he got out and he's running a legitimate business. That's what they're all trying and failing to do.
Pearson is the one who achieved the cowboy dream.
Even Dutch, when he talks about it, ostensibly wants to go legit. He wants to be a mango farmer.
Yeah.
For some reason.
We were joking that it would be funny for the end credits to roll, and then the very last thing you see is Dutch in Tahiti takes a big bite of a fresh, juicy mango.
Looks to camera and goes, see, I had a plan all along. Have a little goddamn faith, Arthur.
And then it does like the vignetting, like a Looney Tunes cutting.
Yeah, the vignette goes all the way in, and then it pulls out a bit, and Dutch goes, wink, and then it goes,
and they end.
Yeah.
Why couldn't that have been the end?
And then flash forward to 2018 when the Van der Linde Mango Company is enormous.
Dutch Van der Linde, the
economic
sixth.
Force. Yeah.
The President of the United States.
Yeah. Most known and loved for his philanthropic work. You just get to, the last shot is a big Van der Linde Mango Enterprise JCB just bulldozing Arthur's grave to make way for a new mango factory.
2 giant speakers playing Faith by George Michael. When you gotta have faith.
Woo! Big oil painting of Dutch in the boardroom. And of course, this wouldn't be possible without a good philanthropist and founder, the hero, Dutch Van der Linde, American legend.
Have a modicum of faith, John, will you please?
Yeah, final thoughts. Did you think it was a good story overall?
I thought it was a great story. I thought it was an incredible game. The only problems I have with it all stem from the fact that essentially you do know what happens. And that's not a problem with Red Dead Redemption 2. I think that's a problem that any prequel game or movie or book or anything has to wrestle with.
Yeah.
But I think that it was probably the most enjoyable prequel thing I've ever seen.
Wow.
Of all prequels,
Yeah.
I think I'm pretty comfortable with saying it's the best prequel I've ever experienced.
Wow. I would say go back and play the money collecting side missions because they really give you a sort of more satisfying redemption arc.
Yeah.
I loved Arthur Morgan. I thought it was great. I'm really enjoying playing. I'm ticking off the 100% completion checklist now, so I'm enjoying playing as John. I had a fantastic time with it. It was just everything I was hoping the sequel would be.
I'm glad to hear you say that, because no one was looking forward to this game more than you.
Yeah, the Guarma chapter was maybe a bit weird, but I mean, we've talked about why. And, you know, in the end, it was more Red Dead Redemption 2, and that's fine. Yeah, had a tremendous time with it. I hope they release some story DLC. They probably won't, but if they do, I'm going to be all over it. Yeah, so thank you for sticking with us through this extremely long discussion about Red Dead Redemption 2's story.
Hopefully, if you're in a position like us, where you finished the game, but your friends haven't, maybe this provided some sort of catharsis.
But if you want to talk about the story yourselves in the comments below, please do. We'll keep an eye on those and jump in with our own thoughts on your comments as well. But for the time being, thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this from outside Xbox, and we will see you next time. And also just have a little goddamn faith, Arthur.
In the arts, realism is where the artist tries to represent the subject as truthfully as possible. In games, realism is where you starve to death after 30 minutes. And this is why I'm constantly snacking. What those 19th century French painters didn't understand is that for certain video games, realism means including realistic.
An anti-hero is like a hero only made of antimatter, such that when the two collide, they mutually annihilate in a devastating release of energy. Oh, what? It's not? Man. What I'm hearing now in a live rewrite of this week's script is that an anti-hero is actually a protagonist lacking the typical characteristics of a hero, like being good or brave or not painfully branding his enemies. And also I smell and Jane is best. Ah, very funny, guys. Anyway, the most memorable of these playable jerks are the ones who tip the balance as far away from the hero bit of anti-hero as possible. Watch on for our, let's not say favourites, and beware of spoilers for the following games.
What have you got?
Looks like a drug overdose.
Get away from him, Phelps. This is my case. Shut your mouth. Since when does a bagman work a case?
I knew this creep wasn't on the morphine heist. Victim of his own product.
Hey, detective! Can we back it off a notch?
As a decorated war hero and justice-seeking officer of the law, L.A. Noir's Cole Phelps has all the makings of a typical good guy. So why is he harder to love than a mouth ulcer? To answer our own rhetorical question, it's because Phelps is a straight-laced cold fish with all the charm of, I guess I'm going to say it again, mouth ulcer.
Well, the head I found without a body piqued my interest. See what you think.
Alas, poor Yorick. I knew him, Horatio. Is it real?
He cheats on his wife, harangues his witnesses, and if you play the way we do, is always doing that thing where you stop your car to let your partner get in, then drive off a bit, then stop again so they chase after you, then drive off again when they reach you.
Some swell harmonies, right?
LAPD's finest. However much of a jerk Cole is, and it is a lot, what makes Cole Phelps compelling is how his unlikability proceeds authentically from his character flaws. His colleagues don't think much more of him than you do, and when you find out Phelps is still wrestling with the horrific outcome of a catastrophically bad call he made during World War II, it's a pretty complete portrait of a tragic jerk in a good suit.
What do we do, Lieutenant? Jesus, look at all the kids! The goddamn screaming! I need to think!
And that's why he's always trolling his partners. And also his witnesses.
A nosy old hag like you knows everything about the people who live under her roof.
Cole, please.
To get to him, you have to get past me.
Out of the way! Ray, for Christ's sake, he doesn't have a gun!
In this post-Red Dead Redemption world, assessing cowboy heroes is going to be tough because none of them are John Marston or Arthur Morgan, the world's best cowboys. In fact, this video was originally going to be titled Two Great Cowboys Who Are the World's Best Cowboys, but then someone said that we weren't doing that. Jane. It was Jane. That said, other cowboy games maybe at least try to have a good, likable protagonist and don't do what the early Call of Juarez games did, which is to make us play as Ray McCall, the least likable person in a cowboy hat since Madonna's Don't Tell Me period.
They'll do nothing of the sort.
Chronologically, the Call of Juarez games begin with Call of Juarez Bound in Blood, in which you can play as either Ray or his brother Thomas, although why you would ever choose to play as Ray is beyond us. That's because he's a bitter, self-righteous, grumpy idiot who, at various points throughout the game, tells his brother Thomas that he'll kill him if he ever steals another woman from him.
By the way, brother, if you ever steal another woman away from me, I swear to God I will take your life. Do you understand me?
Kills an unarmed, groveling man in cold blood despite everyone else's protestations.
The Lord forgave him?
Yes.
A cold-blooded murderer?
Yes.
Well, hell, that's good to know.
Kicks his way into a terrified woman's home and then calls her a bitch.
Now your turn, big man. Open it. Don't you move, bitch.
And fatally shoots his other brother, William, for basically no reason. If you think that any of that caused Ray to maybe assess his past behavior and try to change his ways, then you'd be right. But if you think any of that change was for the better, then you've got another thing coming, because in Call of Juarez, Ray is now older, grumpier, and an actual ordained preacher. This means he's going around doing basically the same violent, awful stuff, only loudly quoting the Bible as he does it.
You're no man of God. I know what you are. I know who you
And
were.
there was given to the beast a mouth, saying great lies and blasphemy.
Self-righteous son of a whore. You think heaven wants anything to do with you? You're going to hell, and I'm gonna send you there.
Maybe give that Bible a read sometime, Ray. Pretty sure there's some stuff in there about not killing people. Incredibly, Techland decided to keep the McCall family going for the next installment in the series, Call of Juarez: The Cartel, which featured Ben McCall, the grandson of Reverend Ray, who is just as hypocritical and self-righteous as his granddad, only swearier.
I did not come to bring peace, but a mother sword.
Before finally realizing that maybe these McCalls are actually all terrible, and in 2013 introducing an actual likable gunslinger, Silas Greaves, in the much, much better Call of Juarez Gunslinger.
Were you a part of that giant Pinkerton posse after the Wild Bunch?
No, boy. A circus like that would have slowed me down. Besides, I wanted Bryant all to myself.
Got there in the end, Call of Juarez. Now, have you thought about adding some redemption to your game? Just a thought.
I was just reading in the archive about the Heretics brand. It sounds painful. Have you ever seen the ritual?
I've never seen the Heretics brand used. No, it's a rare occurrence. But I did spy the face of one so branded. A former member of our order, of course. Out on a retreat, we passed through a fishing town and saw him begging.
Don't get us wrong, Corvo Attano from Dishonored is pretty cool. Stylish mask, neat hand tattoo, awesome slides. It's the only way to travel. But none of this being cool erases the fact that he's a terrible person. It's not even so much that he's a trained killer on a quest to assassinate significant figures in the corrupt Dunwall government. Morally, that pretty much puts him on a par with any other murderous action game hero. Remember, even John Marston shot literally hundreds of people on his way to redemption. Also ran at least one horse off a cliff and accidentally dynamited a nun. When I was playing. Where Corvo reveals his true jerkhood, though, is if you, as the player, attempt to spare the lives of any of these assassination targets. Something that would ostensibly seem to be the right thing to do. Instead, Dishonored's non-lethal options just seem extravagantly cruel. Take High Overseer Campbell, for example.
pick the non-lethal route, and Corvo brands him with the Heretic's mark, causing him to be exiled. He eventually shows up as a Weeper, a sort of Dishonored plague zombie in a later mission. And, I assume, dies anyway while bleeding from his eyeballs. Great work, Corvo. Top heroing. Lady Boyle's fate is probably even worse, as Corvo decides to deliver her directly to her creepy stalker, Lord Brisby, who kidnaps her and takes her off to his private island, never to be heard of again.
You found her! Quickly, let's get her on board.
Rather be a zombie, I reckon. Dishonored 2 demonstrates that Corvo's level of chill hasn't increased at all in the intervening years, and he'd still give Jigsaw from the Saw movies a run for his money in needlessly horrible, ironic punishments.
Anton Sokolov made this lock. Now you've got what you wanted, Ramsey.
In the first proper mission, he locks Mortimer Ramsey in a safe with 1 month's worth of rations and sods off to Karnaca for a 2-month vacation.
Is this Ramsey?
Oh, he didn't starve to death. He's just made of stone forever now. Totally different.
If you were planning to do a group cosplay of Heavy Rain's 4 playable characters, you'd have to draw straws for which of you had to be miserable private detective Scott Shelby. That's not merely on account of Scott Shelby being a charisma black hole in a grubby trench coat and the empirically least photogenic of all Heavy Rain protagonists.
You should be careful. They'll probably be back. Sorry about the mess.
And it's not even because of the grim, vengeful temper that fuels him through the violentest mansion rampage ever perpetrated by a licensed PI. That's PI for pissed individual, right there. No, it's fundamentally because Scott Shelby is a child murderer, and not in the fun spooky way like Voldemort, but in the Scott Shelby way, like a twisted serial killer who drowns children, which he is and does.
Sean! Sean! Can you hear me? Daddy's here. I'm gonna get you out of there.
Admittedly, you don't discover this gigantic character flaw of Shelby's until the denouement of the game, but it did at least explain how we never warmed to Scott Shelby and his gloomy gumshoe shtick. Just as the ancient Greeks believed that beauty and goodness were inextricably linked, it's the guy without the cheekbones that turns out to be the serial killer. Should have seen that coming.
And then there's the tattoos, the hair, the weird music, the funny toys, the niche drugs, the everything.
What the f*** are we talking about?
You are a hipster.
What?
You're a hipster. I hate hipsters.
In Grand Theft Auto 5's main story, you play as not 1, but 3 different characters. 4 if you count the brief bit where you play as a dog. And I do. There's Michael DeSanta, a walking midlife crisis with movie producer ambitions, Franklin Clinton, a young hustler with amazing driving skills, and Trevor Phillips, a violent lunatic who's about as stable as a one-legged table.
I need some breakfast.
Outside of the game's prologue, our first real introduction to Trevor really sets the tone for the character for the rest of the game. He meets Johnny Klebitz, the hero of GTA 4 expansion The Lost and Damned, and a popular character in his own right, and curb stomps him to death. Trevor is also the character who takes the lead in the game's controversial torture scene, something he seems to enjoy, despite the long speech he gives afterwards about the ineffectiveness of torture.
The media and the government would have us believe that torture is some necessary thing. We need it to get information.
Yeah, that'd be a lot more convincing if you weren't just theatrically sparking the jump leads, mate. As arresting a character as he is, there's just something wrong about playing as Trevor. Probably the fact that he's a gross, weird, violent, sociopathic maniac who kills people for fun. Yeah, that's probably it. Then there's the fact that every time we switch back to him after playing as someone else, he's doing something awful to someone or something.
You had us up all night! We were trying to smoke crystal in there. You hideous mistake!
And the time he murders Floyd, the timid, put-upon character whose life he's already ruined, and Floyd's girlfriend in a cutscene for no real reason.
Trevor? Hey there, Wade. Did you meet Deborah? Interesting lady.
You can see why we tend to play GTA 5 mostly as Michael or Franklin, who are at least in denial about the fact that they're sociopathic killers and have hobbies like yoga rather than whatever the hell is going on here. You could argue that Trevor is just there to represent the way that people actually play Grand Theft Auto games, in that it's fully in character for him to steal a car, mow down a bunch of pedestrians, and then idly stroll down the street shooting people.
They were right! Hipsters are dead!
Which doesn't make me feel any better about playing as this guy, Rockstar. Still, at least we're able to get some measure of revenge by taking Trevor, whose biggest pet peeve is being called a hipster, and dressing him like the world's biggest hipster. Checkmate, Trev.
Hi there. You're even better looking in person. After the show, I want your autograph somewhere special.
This list wouldn't be complete without Duke Nukem, the titular hero of Duke Nukem Forever. And if you laughed at the word titular, you're exactly this game's target audience. Duke Nukem Forever was an exceptionally bad video game, spending 12 years in development hell. And although we have a soft spot for previous game in the series Duke Nukem 3D, this sequel, which was finally released in 2011, completed Duke Nukem's transition from throwback action hero idiot to painfully cringeworthy douche.
Have a taste of my ball.
It's like a dad joke, if your dad worked in the adult film industry. In Duke Nukem Forever, somehow Duke manages to be both the hyper-capable savior of Earth...
We need you, Duke. Now more than ever.
...and also barely able to sign his own name.
Mr. Nukem, will you sign this for me?
Sure, kid. But I better not find this on eBay.
And while the character is supposed to be self-absorbed, and the game occasionally has fun at his expense, within that universe, he's still supposed to be a hero, icon, and Earth's greatest champion. That's why it's all the more jarring when he acts like a flippant, uncaring jackass.
Thanks for hanging out.
He can't hear you, Duke, because he's dead. The worst moment in the game occurs during this alien hive level, and has Duke Nukem tossing out his crap one-liners in a scenario so fantastically unpleasant that we're not going to show it in any detail here.
I thought this was exit only.
So instead, here's a clip of us making him play with some poo.
What the hell? No! Come on, no! This is disgusting!
You're welcome.
It has been long since our kind waited for the one destined to free us. Gaia foretold of our salvation, Ghost of Sparta.
I have not come here for you or your kind.
Kratos from the God of War series has some serious anger management issues, but I suppose you couldn't have a God of War who's a chill dude. Otherwise he'd be the god of, hey, why don't we talk this thing out over coffee? That still doesn't excuse some of the truly awful things he's done on his quest for, I don't know, revenge? Is it still revenge after like 7 games? Kratos is apparently a busy deity and has stuff which is going to get done, regardless of whether it causes the death or displacement of thousands of people who aren't Kratos. In God of War Ghost of Sparta, for example, he frees a titan in order to add fire damage to his blades, but in doing so, causes a volcano to erupt, destroying an entire town.
The battle with Scylla had shaken the very foundation of Poseidon's kingdom.
In God of War 3, he kills Poseidon, flooding most of Greece. And then later in that game, he chops Hermes' legs off, releasing a cloud of gross plague flies across the earth. Worse still, it's going to be at least a couple of millennia before someone invents a can of Raid. That could all just be discounted as mere carelessness, of course. I mean, how was Kratos to know that Hermes was a human-shaped bag of insects? The thing is, Kratos reveals himself to be a cruel, vindictive jerk by also victimizing one mortal man in particular as well.
Thank you
thought you came back for me.
I didn't come back for you.
In the first God of War game, this poor boat captain is dropped down the throat of a Hydra to his death by Kratos. Even dying isn't an escape though, as in the underworld he's used as a ladder, stabbed in the chest, and kicked into the river Styx.
You again?
Harsh. Still, at least in the new God of War, fatherhood has finally given Kratos an amount of chill.
Close your heart to their desperation. Close your heart to their suffering.
0 is an amount.
Thank you so much for watching this video. Leave your picks for the most anti-heroes down in the comments below, and do hit the bell icon to be notified every time we upload a video. If you'd like to watch some more of this sort of thing, we've got some heroes here who had less chill than a busted refrigerator, so they're super furious guys up there. And then down here, we have a list of the villains who cheated you out of a much-deserved boss fight. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Red Dead Redemption 2 isn't exactly what you'd call a cheery game, what with all the angry cowboys and swearing and random murder taking place. But there are a few places throughout the world where things get darker than an Annesburg coal mine. Join us now on a creepy excursion through some of the spookiest, weirdest, and downright freakiest places in all of Red Dead Redemption 2. Hold tight, Horson, this is gonna get rough. It's rare to see a friendly face when you're out and about in Red Dead Redemption 2, particularly when you spend as much time sassing people and then riding off as we do.
I like you, mister. You have a kind face. The kind I like to punch. What'd you say?
So it's a nice surprise when you're riding around Lemoyne to meet this jolly fellow hanging around on his porch at the Aberdeen pig farm.
Don't be shy, partner.
I mean, sure, he could have put a shirt on, or some shoes, or looked less like an obvious murderer, but his demeanor sure is pleasant.
Well, ain't this a rare treat? Why didn't you tell me we had guests coming? I'd have fixed myself up nice.
Oh, and his wife's here too. Well, I mean, it would be rude to turn down an invitation, right? And Arthur Morgan is anything but rude.
That smells delicious. The food don't smell too bad neither.
Oh, stop it, you!
Well, this is awkward and sinister. What do you reckon, Arthur?
And we still know how to have a hog killing time.
Yeah. Turns out Arthur is right, because if you drink what the couple offers you, you'll pass out and wake up in a ditch with another unlucky soul on top of you, minus all your money, but with an added murderous rage. Should have stolen the guns as well, guys. There is a tragic backstory here. It seems that the couple are actually brother and sister who killed their parents before settling down to their life of weird traveller murder, storing all their stolen cash behind a giant portrait of their dead mother. Man, I'm going back to just insulting people whenever I see them. Way safer.
That's a fine horse you got there.
Hey, thanks.
How long you been married?
That ain't even called for.
Being a gunsmith is a stressful job, probably. You've got to do loads of delicate, intricate work, sometimes you drop things and they go off, and oh yeah, people are always robbing you with the stuff you just sold them.
Uh-huh. Let's think about this very carefully now.
So you can see why some gunsmiths take up hobbies to help them blow off some steam. That being said, we can't possibly condone the extracurricular activities of the gunsmith in Rhodes, who's rejected poker or cigarette card collecting in favor of kidnapping and imprisonment. Stop by the gunsmith to pick up some essentials, and you might be greeted instead by a voice coming from the basement. Investigate further, and it's pretty clear that the Rhodes gunsmith has gone wrong.
Why are you dressed up like that? I've seen some sick perversions in my time, but this one might take the prize.
Turns out the gunsmith has kidnapped this young man, chained him to a bed in his basement, and forced him to wear a sailor suit.
Why are you wearing that sailor suit?
That crazy maniac put me in it. He thinks I'm his kid's son.
He thinks this young man is his dead son, and this whole situation is deeply sad and unpleasant in every possible direction.
I know it was wrong. I just couldn't face that he was gone.
So, a horrible situation for everyone involved. Oh, except me, because I got a Lancaster repeater out of this box, so not all bad. Not all bad. Look, I don't want to to tell you how to live your life, but maybe don't go wandering around swamps in the middle of the night. Firstly, mosquitoes. Secondly, there are alligators everywhere. And thirdly, if you're in the swamps around Le Gras, you might come across the home of the Night Folk, an incredibly creepy group of zombie-looking murderers. Our first introduction to the Night Folk was coming across this unfortunate gentleman on a ride into Saint-Denis. Closer inspection revealed that someone had strung him up and that also those people were right there and were terrifying. According to a letter found on the body, this guy took a bet from his frat bros to spend a night in the bayou to prove he wasn't scared of the Night Folk, which is pretty ironic considering how he got murdered by the Night Folk and all. The next time we ran into these scabby scallywags was a few nights later when we spotted a couple of Night Folk casually toting around a dead woman, which, again, don't want to tell you how to live, but that's a no in our book. Finally, we stumbled across this guy camping out in the bayou. Turns out, Night Folk had taken over his cabin and were using it as a base to do horrible murders, so we agreed to help him out, because it wasn't clear at that point just how much annoying talking this guy would be doing on the way.
Gator bites is nasty. Then turtle bites is bad too. They call them snapping for a reason.
If it wasn't clear before, the multiple mutilated bodies strung up on the way to the cabin make it obvious that the Night Folk are bad news, and there's maybe something a bit more sinister and supernatural going on behind the scenes, in the way that none of them ever talk, going about their grim business and even attacking you in total silence. Which some people could learn a thing or two from. Not naming any names. You. It's you. As creepy as the Night Folk are, at least they're actual physical beings that you can put a shotgun slug into should you so wish. The same can't be said for the actual, literal ghost that you can find around Blue Water Marsh in Lemoyne. Head to the bayou late at night and you might hear a faint woman's voice despite there being no one around. Checking back on successive nights reveals more and more of this tragic story. And occasionally, you might actually catch a glimpse of the woman in question herself, who is now, you'll be pleased and or terrified to hear, a ghost.
Mother, you can be so unkind. So very unkind. It ain't like that.
Online sleuths have decided that this woman is Agnes Dowd, a woman buried near Shady Bell who, her gravestone tells us, killed herself and others. And from what we can deduce from the voice that we hear, hers is a tale of heartbreak, violence, and revenge.
She never loved you. She never did.
So, to repeat my earlier advice, there are horrible things hiding in the swamps at night, and only about half of them are alligators.
You all right there, boy?
The area around Rhodes in Red Dead Redemption 2 is the stomping ground of two wealthy old plantation families, the Greys and the Braithwaites, both of whom hate each other and have been feuding since time immemorial. However, it turns out that the Braithwaites' hatred doesn't just extend to the Greys, but also to members of their own family that they consider to be an embarrassment to the name.
Our families, the Greys and the Braithwaites, we bury our secrets, and we bury them deep.
Penelope Braithwaite mentions a cousin of hers that disappeared, and if you head to this spot on the Braithwaite estate, you can find exactly where she went. Whoa! Yes, the Braithwaites, for whatever reason, chose to lock this member of their family in an outhouse and bind it up with chains and then, I guess, forget about her? What the hell, guys?
Yeah. What about this? You want to marry me?
Yeah, I'm okay, thanks. But seriously, that's not on, Braithwaites. Now I feel way less guilty about all that stuff I did in the main story. With how much of people's time in the Old West appears to have been spent cutting up animals and peeling off their skin, it was only a matter of time before someone decided to start sticking bits of different animals together to make horrifying man-made mutants. So it's no surprise to find out that someone has been doing just that up near the Van Horn trading post. Head to this house just out of town and you'll notice that while it looks abandoned, there is a light on in one of the upper floor windows. A bit of cowboy parkour later, and we can make our way inside to this laboratory where, oh my god, what the hell is that? Okay, it looks like someone was trying to create a mishmash of a bear, a boar, an eagle, and a bunch of other stuff for reasons that I'm sure were clear to them, but remain a mystery to me. On the one hand, advances in science are a good thing, and a deeper understanding of the relationship between man and animals could be beneficial to the human race. But on the other hand, I am burning this place to the ground. See ya. Red Dead Redemption 2 is full of beautiful scenery, wide sweeping vistas, lush forests and imposing mountains, so it's a real shame when these lovely views get ruined by piles of limbs and blood trails, like they are here up near Strawberry. Further investigation reveals that this is the work of a serial killer who has really put some thought into their presentation.
Can't imagine this is here by accident.
As you travel around Red Dead Redemption 2, you'll come across 2 more victims, each presented in the same way, and with another clue as to the location of the killer's hideout, because this serial killer apparently welcomes visitors.
Making a point with you.
Eventually, you're able to track the killer to his basement lair, and yes, it is exactly what you were imagining when I say the words serial killer's basement lair. The place is full of skulls and knives, the desk is covered in overbearing letters from his mother and unsent letters to the newspapers explaining how great he is, and the less said about the corpse display room, the better. Also, some life advice: if you're exploring a serial killer's basement lair, make sure that the serial killer isn't actually there, because otherwise this happens. Luckily, this serial killer is a useless chump, so we're easily able to smack him in the head with a skull, knock him out, and drop him at the sheriff's office so that justice can be served. He'd rather that the sheriff was served, but at least someone round here is good at their job. Me. It's me.
Thank you, my lord. What a monster.
So those were our favourite creepy spots that we found throughout Red Dead Redemption 2. And before you ask, no, I'm not going into this shack in Lakay. What did I say in that last video? Nothing good ever happens in shacks.
You're real strange, you know that?
So, you hungry?
Okay there, boy.
Let us know in the comments below what creepy discoveries you've made on your Red Dead Redemption adventures, and make sure you are subscribed and hit the bell icon to be notified when we upload lots more Red Dead Redemption 2 videos very soon. Thanks for watching. With the holidays fast approaching, chances are many of you will have to deal with the real monster of the festive season, Krampus. Hangovers? Okay, well they're bad too, I guess. But no matter how much you may overindulge this holiday season, chances are that your morning regrets won't come close to the epic hangovers endured by some of our favourite video game characters. Please enjoy, watch out for minor spoilers ahead for the following games, and also Krampus, for pity's sake, he's coming! It's Krampusnacht is soon, with the root and bundles, the birds. Don't get your hands off me! Why won't anyone believe me? Krampus, it's got to you too! How much did he pay you? Is Krampus blood money? It's all over you, I can tell. You're a part of the shadowy Krampus.
A few drinks, a few laughs, and a contest. What could be better?
We generally try and avoid drinking contests, especially after what happened at last year's Outside Xbox Christmas party. I think. I can't really remember. You'd think though, when you're the Dragonborn, hero of legend, owner of a fancy horned helmet, and able to shout enemies into the sun, you'd be able to hold your mead. So when you're challenged to a drinking contest by the singularly unimpressive looking Sam Guiven, you've got to think you're going to win it hands down. Well, bad luck, because after just 3 drinks, it's not just hands down, it's arms down, legs down, and yes, face down on the floor of the tavern, because you've both A, lost, and B, passed out.
Hey, you don't look so good.
First row dough, more like. However, as bad as the drinking is, it's nothing compared to the hangover. You wait to find yourself in a temple you've apparently wrecked during the previous night's festivities, staffed by a priestess who, justifiably, isn't super happy to see you.
I see. So you don't remember fondling the statuary then? I'm guessing you also don't remember coming in here and blathering incoherently about marriage or a goat.
What follows is you attempting to piece together the events of last night to figure out just what the hell happened. You discover along the way that your night involved fondling statuary, stealing goats, and attempting to marry a Hagraven, a creature about as attractive as the name Hagraven makes it sound.
Darling, I've been waiting for you to return.
Eventually you discover that this whole escapade was the work of Sam himself, who turns out to be Sanguine, the Daedric prince of hedonism and debauchery, and who transforms into his true form, which looks like Darth Maul's harder older brother. Or to put it another way, he just got Sith-faced, whereas you got...
No.
Okay.
I haven't been so entertained in at least 100 years.
Cool. Well, I'm glad you had fun, Sam. Now I have to give my half firehouse to a hag raven in a really messy divorce. This is worse than the Outside Xbox Christmas party. I expect.
Good morning, Vault 76. This is the Overseer. I hope you all enjoyed the party last night, even those who may have overindulged and overslept.
Unlike most of the vaults in the world of Fallout, Vault 76 was genuinely built to house and protect the people who would rebuild civilization.
Those chosen to enter this vault must be our best and our brightest.
Whereas the other vaults were built to... what were they for again? To produce skeletons in vault suits? That's gotta be it. The premise of Fallout 76 is that Reclamation Day has finally come, and after 25 years underground, it's time for you, O Vault 76 dweller, to stride out into the wasteland and start reclaiming it.
We stand together, knowing that here in Vault 76, our future begins.
Except the first day of the rest of your now above ground life isn't off to a flawless start. You had such a good time at last night's Reclamation Eve party that you've overslept by what must be several hours, waking up bleary-eyed and woozy-headed to find everyone else has vacated Vault 76 and has run off to reclaim civilization without you. All the good civilization will have been taken by now. Oh, thanks for waking me up, guys. It's like living together in a hole for 25 years meant nothing. It must be one of history's all-time great hangovers if it made you late for the one mission you've spent a quarter of a century training for. That would explain the dry mouth, pounding head, and full body achiness I've got going on. Although so would this radiation poisoning. Man, this Reclamation Day sucks. I'm going back in the vault.
For now, let's drink some. Forget about market.
It was drink that started all this.
We'll just have a couple. Settle you down, then head back, okay?
Okay. There wasn't much to do to entertain yourself back in 1899. There was the newfangled Magic Lantern show, of course.
There's a whole mess of critters out there in the woods that aim to eat us, so I'm gonna consume them first.
Yes, sir. He really took to killing all manner of things.
Okay, maybe not that. How about that game where you stab yourself repeatedly in the hand?
Let's go. Come on.
Not bad either. Oh, I know. How about the ever-popular activity, America's pastime, antagonizing Uncle?
You're just dead wood now, Uncle.
You add an insult to injury?
Ah, that's the stuff. That said, you can only do that for a solid hour and a half tops. So, what to do with the rest of your time? Well, if you're anything like Arthur Morgan, the protagonist of Red Dead Redemption 2, the answer is go drinking with your good buddy Lenny, an activity that starts off innocently enough.
Just one or two, right, Arthur? Of course, just a drink. John? Can we get a couple beers, please?
Before taking a decided turn towards drunkenness as more and more whiskey becomes involved.
That's great, partner.
And then a hard left into attempted murder. And I think we've all been here after one too many, am I right?
Get lost, buddy.
Shut up, mister! Yeah, shut your mouth, mister.
With a drinking session this epic, you have to expect an equivalently epic hangover, and Red Dead Redemption 2 doesn't disappoint, with Arthur waking up in jail and then Lenny getting reacquainted with his breakfast on the steps of the sheriff's office. Awful. Plus now, I've lost the moral high ground with Uncle. What am I going to berate him about now?
Here he is. Worst pimp in the history of the world.
Oh yeah, that'll work, I think.
The sooner you answer our questions, the better the odds we don't miss a bottle and evaporate your face.
Okay, stop! Okay, please.
For us, hangovers aren't just about pounding headaches and churning nausea, they're also about powerful feelings of regret for your actions of the night before. By that metric, pretty much the entirety of the game Bulletstorm is a dreadful hangover for lead character Grayson Hunt, who begins the game with some extremely spirited drinking.
Have another drink, Gray. It'll help your aim.
Please, please!
When you're in deep space, you get to decide when it's 5 p.m. Unfortunately, the alcohol probably played at least a tiny part in Grayson's decision to attack enormous Confederate warship, the Ulysses, with his own piddling pirate ship.
Christmas come early, boys. We got us some mass murder and piece of shit out there waiting on us to deliver some reparation.
We're with you, Gray. Serrano hung us all out to dry.
I ain't dry no more.
No, you're drunk.
Then, in his boozy wisdom, he decides to ram the Ulysses with said piddling ship, perhaps forgetting his spaceship is probably designed to be most effective when it retains its structural integrity and isn't exposed to the lethal vacuum of space. I mean, the most embarrassing thing I've ever done when drunk is breaking into my own house through an open window while wearing fishnet hold-ups. So I'm feeling pretty good about myself right now. Halloween 2008. It's a long story. Grayson lands on the planet of Stygia, presumably with a splitting headache that's as much the booze as it is the violent crash landing. And does he learn his lesson? Well, the fact that he ends up in a nightclub mere hours later suggests not.
Burn!
Man, I guess it's unhappy hour for that guy. Of course, if you played Bulletstorm Full Clip Edition, you could play the game as Duke Nukem, who's probably still suffering from the colossal hangover that is the reputation damage caused by Duke Nukem Forever.
It's time to kick ass and chew bubble gum. But I don't even know where I am.
It's called the bargain bin, Duke.
What sort of party are you hoping to have tonight, Commander? I could set things up for quiet conversation, or would you prefer a more energetic evening?
I think it's time to blow off some steam.
Excellent choice, Commander. Allow me to queue up a series of popular nightclub tracks and drink lists.
A wise woman once sang, "We woke up in the kitchen saying, how the hell did this happen?" And if Transcendental Guru and Good Hair Have a Beyonce isn't immune to a hangover, well, I guess there's no escaping them for the rest of us. And by us, I mean the crew of the Normandy SR2 off of Mass Effect.
Damn your lettuce.
In Mass Effect 3's delightfully fluffy Citadel DLC, your Shepard moves into a ritzy space station apartment and throws the party to end all parties.
160. Anyone counting? Miranda?
There's always one at the party, isn't there? The point is for you and your beloved crew members to take a break from saving the galaxy and blow off some steam. But it is a house party, so inevitably things get out of hand. Cut to the morning after, when it's time for hard partying Commander Shepard to pick his or her way through the wreckage of the night before.
I am going to die.
You find the Normandy's best and brightest suffering through New Year's Day grade hangovers, strewn around your new apartment like so many sacks of dehydrated, nauseous, regret-filled potatoes. They're waking up in not just the kitchen but all over the place and, like Queen Bey, asking how the hell did this happen? Alcohol. It was alcohol.
Your voice, sir, not so loud. Please, thank you.
This would be fine if the only serious consequence was the depletion of the Normandy supplies of bacon and eggs. But may we remind you, Normandy crew, that the survival of all sentient life in the Milky Way depends on our mission success. So this party will literally be the one to end all parties if you don't drink a pint of water, take a couple of aspirin, and walk it off.
So I've managed not to throw up. Feeling pretty good about that.
That said, the ultimate purpose of civilization is to produce a Beyonce, and it was all downhill from there. So I guess call in the Reapers. Time to harvest the galaxy. We're done here.
You live past 700. You start paying for a night like that the next morning.
Just gonna drop a little backdoor into the system so I can get back inside later. Sorry, Bloom. We've got unfinished business.
He's heading out. Bag him.
Yeah.
Watch Dogs 2 tells the story of Marcus Holloway, a young meme-loving hacker who wants to join the hacking group DedSec. Luckily, Marcus is the best. You can tell because during his initiation hacking mission, he only gets shot 6 or 7 times.
Suspect in trouble here!
And also somehow does this without breaking a spine.
Josh! Okay.
Thanks to this impressive act of hacktivism, Marcus is in. Unfortunately, what he's in to is DedSec, a group of hackers made up entirely of unbearable hipsters you wouldn't want to get stuck talking to at a party.
Yo, your hot sauce? Yeah, man, I loved your frat house hat. Real talk.
What follows is the traditional DedSec welcome of drinking heavily under the Golden Gate Bridge and making vague Banksy-esque statements about how the government is, like, bad and stuff.
All that data in the hands of the government? They'll arrest you for shit before you even do it.
Possibly there's more of the drinking heavily than the political statements, however, as before long